Welcome, welcome, and happy Friday to one and to all. We are going to be blessed again with Professor or Dr. A.H., who will be the host of tonight's broadcast titled Pillow Talk. Not education, but better practices. And you can see the thumbnail. This is going to be a grown and adult conversation. The link is dropped, however, it will be for those who would like to engage after Dr. A.H. has presented his material. So with that, let us all welcome back to Doe Eyes TV, Dr. A.H. Welcome, sir.
How you doing?
I am doing well. Happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday to you.
Thank you. So, this is your baby, if you will. This is by subscriber request and a very important and needed conversation. Some may feel a little bit uncomfortable, but again, this is going to be a grown and adult conversation, and you will be the host. So again, introduce yourself with a brief bio and do what you do best, and that is educate and present. And while you do that, I will mute my mic. And again, thank you so very much, and welcome back to this platform.
No problem. What I say about me is I'll try to be a little bit humble in that. I'm a doctor of public administration. I am a retired Army veteran. I'm a former Baltimore City police officer.
Thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you for that. I also have worked in several different law enforcement capacities. I'll just put it like that. Everything from local, like I said, Baltimore, to some defense stuff, to some federal stuff. Always meeting the challenges, if you will. I am a level 1 tantrika. I am certified in tantric bodywork from Tantra Nova in Chicago. And I'm just a brother here that has lived, loved, and enjoyed, and wants to continue to do that. Tonight's topic came from a list of topics that I had dealing with progressive social reform. And I say progressive in the widest sense because sometimes when you use those words, the connotations or the meanings get misconstrued or they just get twisted. So what I mean by progressive is moving forward in a positive fashion, not so much moving forward and for change. Everybody says, oh, we want change, we want something different. But change doesn't necessarily mean good because it matters on which side of that change you are, that if you're going to want to accept it or if you're going to embrace it. But there's ways in which you can kind of get information from everybody and look at what needs to happen and then try to put the best things forward while you educate and talk with and get feedback from everyone to make adjustments as you need to. So that's what I mean by progressive. So with that, let's get started with our discussion on a Friday.
Yes, sir. I'm very excited and intrigued.
So the whole premise for me was about sex education, meaning instead of more sex education, let's get to some better practices. Or actually, I said more practice. Let's talking about the sex education. And I said that because there's always this push. You hear people talking about, oh, we got to educate kids and we got to educate the people on better sex, on what sex is and all this stuff, but they never do so. You know, they follow the same structural pattern that leads us down these pathways to where we have all this deviancy and everything. And before I go further, let me explain. We're talking more from our community, even though some things will apply to the mainstream, meaning everybody in society. There are some specific things that go along with Black American people because of our unique experience in the world. So we kind of hit that last time when we talked about our unique history. So let's remember that when we're having this mature discussion. So let's talk about something here. Relations. What does relations mean? In the old world sense of things, relation is the way two or more people get together. Now, it was relations was used to refer to sexual intercourse. I'm saying that word specifically because that has a specific meaning. Okay, but relations is refers to sexual intercourse because it had to deal with the connection between two people, or sometimes two or more people. We're gonna have to keep it real in a politically correct fashion. So, you know, this is 2023. Should be no blushing and shyness in the room. And if anybody's out there and they want to throw some questions up in the chat, please feel free to do so. Okay, so what does that mean in association? And association is just a connection, a cooperative link between people. And harmony is the true meaning of harmony means to be in agreement, in accord. All these things are important when we start talking about sex in our community because that's really what's going on when we see the anger, frustration, confusion, and deviancy. And when I use the term deviancy, it's not in judgment. It's just a word that we all know means negative or adverse results or behavior. That's just, or plain simple English, just bad behavior. Okay, stuff that you don't want to happen or you wouldn't want to happen to you or anyone period, but especially you or anyone you're close to. These negative, deviant, bad behaviors and practices. Okay, and you say, well, Al, what do you mean with this bad behavior you're talking about when it comes to sex? You know, sex is just sex. People get together and it's just a natural thing and they're going to do it. And you're right, it is. And that's why we have to have a better discussion around it. We talked about the fact that in our world now, things have become a bit demonic. And by demonic, not trying to get overly religious, but when you say the term demonic, you mean other than godly. And other than godly are unholy. Like when you say holistic, we know that to mean mind, body, and soul when it comes to living or our life practices or healing. So holy is a derivative of, holistic is a derivative of holy. So the unholy would just be demonic, which again just means, let's just keep it simple, means bad. Okay. And we know that the spirit over our world right now, especially over our community, is bad, is negative. We can point fingers. Oh, it's the black woman's fault. Oh, it's the black man's fault. It's the government's fault. It's those people's fault. Whatever, however you want to put it. But in essence, let's get to some common truths and agree on some common things to have a better discussion. Everything is solo, whether we want to accept that fact or not. It's one to a birth canal and one to a casket. So while many of us don't want to believe that things begin and end with us, in essence, they do, because of the free will of how we exist. We live in a free will space, okay? And you have to give your going along willingly. You have to do that. Necessarily, people can't force you, or it's a universal violation to be forced into some things that you don't want to. Okay.
Yes. Welcome, Andrea Smith. And thank you. Andrea spoke to you.
Oh, hello, Andrea. I didn't see that. Sorry.
Yes.
Hey, happy Friday. Hey, Graham, happy Friday. Okay, so let me move forward. I had sent you a few links to begin, because to get it in context, there's a great couple, Nathan and Julia Hare. Dr. Nathan and Julia Hare, my apologies. And they wrote a book it was published back in the 80s, called Crisis in Black Sexual Politics. That is the premier book if you want to get into theory about some of our practices in the Black community that deal with some of the interactions that go on between the men and the women. The link to what's going on sometimes in people's minds, why they act the way they do, just a lot of social and psychological processes and information, and a lot of good examples about what happens. But I'm going to read a couple of reviews from it to let you know why our discussion has to be what I'm talking about, as far as less education and more practice. The first review was from somebody, and it was closer to, like, I'm just going to say, closer to our time period. And it talked about several people. And it said they contributed to this book of essays because the book itself is just really a lot of kind of like how Dr. Cresswellson's ISIS Papers book was. It's a bunch of research essays that are put together. So tons of information. But this person said some of the opinions may be a bit outdated, such as colorism and stereotyping Black people as being poor. This book really analyzes many of the struggles of the nucleus of the Western model of the Black American family. I did not see many examples of success through fictive kinships and applying the "it takes a village" proverbs, African proverbs, but I still think that they address the emasculation of Black men through employment as a big root of many low-income relationship problems. This person said, however, in this time period we're in, say like 2018, we have more lower middle class to middle class Black families, and I think we are seeing better relationship and family outcomes. They said it would be nice to have a follow-up called Breakthrough in Black Sexual Politics. So that was that person's opinion and review of the book. Now I'm going to read this other one. And it was from an earlier time period, about 5 years earlier. And this person said, this book, it stays from a Black male and female issues that hit us in the gut and keeps us reading. It's a must read for both young and old people to get a handle on the mind wars and the karate chops to our psyche that have been played on us for over a number of years. These mind games keep us fighting one another and preventing us from melding into a good unit, and it's generational. So within our own framework and our own prime directive with our offspring. So, when we read about these things in this book, it says the same problems have never been resolved because we have not seriously faced them and on a large level we have not been debriefed out of our madness that keeps us going at each other. Said the Dr. Harris did an excellent job, and I must say, I wish I had learned more and took this on when I was younger. And I wanted to read that because many times in our community, we seem to be stuck on people believing that newer or more nuanced information is better and it's going to lead to some better outcomes or better results. And if we look throughout human history, not just our history, but human history, we know that is not the case. Okay, it's just not true. The colloquial term is there's nothing new under the sun, as people would say. And I believe that is referenced in the scripture in the Bible. Okay, now that's a big truth, that there's nothing new under the sun. Someone may say something that may catch your attention because of what your focus is or because of the words they use. You're more ready to accept them. But that doesn't change the meaning of the information and the actions that need to be taken. And that's what this discussion is going to be more about, actions, and why action is more important. You know, what do people always say? Action is more important than words. Fellas, when you're trying to talk to a woman or you are getting together and then what she say, I need to see some action. You know, I'm not trying to hear all this, yeah, I'm going to do this. Or if you are talking to your spouse and, you know, there's a big thing, a financial obligation is there, they don't want to hear how you're going to pay. They just need you to get it paid. Okay? Show me. Okay? Same thing with the men. You know, women are like, oh, well, you know, I just really, you know, you look really nice to me and I just really like being next to you. And then they don't, you know, yeah, that's nice to hear, but I need to see that firsthand. I need to feel that, experience that, which is action. Okay? Versus, you know, you just talking. You know, talking is important, conveying information is important, but action, let's get to some action. You know, because of the influence of social media, particularly YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, just all social media, and its influence in our community as Black people in America, Black Americans, we need to really understand the true impact. And it's not like it's going to clean up our community if we change some practice or do everything. Again, everything begins and ends with you. So let's think about it from a small unit thing. Sometimes we're too big. We're looking at things to, well, you know, that's not going to change what's going on in my neighborhood. Okay, no, it's not, but it can change what's going on in your household, which is what you should be concerned with first. Sometimes we're too forward. Again, from that past conversation, I said, let's be present in the now. It's okay to plan for tomorrow, and we can't waste any time going back or trying to look back, you know, only looking back as a reference point and learning what we should have taken from that experience. But whatever happened, it's over. Your power is now. So the action has to happen now. The actions you take in the present will ensure what you want to happen in the future, those plans you're making, but you gotta focus on the now. Hey, there you go, Andrea. That's exactly right. So
yes, actions speak louder than words. Show me instead of telling me. Now, let me ask you something, Dr. L. Is this something that you're facing or focusing more towards the Bible and scripture, or real life, or a combination of the two?
It's really a combination. And the reason I have to say that is because within our community, we can't deny the influence that the Christian church and the Bible has played in the Black community. Now, the last time we talked, I said there's a dual function of church, where it's the religious aspect and the fellowship aspect, that we don't talk about the fellowship aspect as much, and that's why that's drifted off somewhat. And some of the benefits of being of that fellowship have drifted off, and therefore we don't have the bonds and the connectedness and the trust that we used to have. We don't have the connectedness about each other and with each other. Okay, beyond scripture and the Bible and everything else, it's not about being so religious, holier than thou. And I know some people get into that, and a lot of people nowadays, they don't even want to hear about church or the Bible because they've had such negative experience with people that they would call hypocrites. Okay. And that's where your bottom line for a hypocrite is just somebody who does the opposite of what they say. Okay. And when it's about do as I say, not as I do, meaning words over action, people don't want to hear that. People don't want to see that because it's not realistic, and it doesn't provide the best example. But when you model the behavior that you want others to follow, even if they don't follow it, they still look to you as the reference point. Okay? So that's what I guess the saying is. That's the basis of where of my take on that. With your question about is it from a biblical perspective or a mixture of practical perspectives along with biblical scripture and church and religious experience.
Okay. So at least everyone is under that understanding where the premise is coming from.
Yeah, so this is not a religious discussion, but you're going to hear me reference some religious stuff, simply because it's to be honest, as for our community, it's almost impossible, if you will, to not reference it. People have to remember, some of us are Generation X's and some of us are baby boomers. And, now millennials and Gen Z and other people may not so quite want to hear that or connect with that. But Gen X definitely connects with it, and baby boomers totally connect with it, because the great generation, the World War II generation, there is pretty much, there's only a handful of those people left in our society. That's what they were so rooted in, because those institutions pretty much formed their lives. The baby boomers, it was the same. The Gen X's is when it started changing, and then millennials and Gen Z just do what you do. Okay, and that's not a negative. That's just how we have been progressing. Now, I had referenced also some research material that talked about how Black men use sex to cope with their stress. Stressful situations in life: loss, separation, grief, depression, all kinds of things. Stress, sex itself is one of those things, one of those outlets, like I talked about. And I said, people are going to find an outlet, and usually it's not going to be in a good way, because they're trying to get rid of the stress. They're trying to get some comfort, get away from that pain, because we're all vulnerable. Black people are the most vulnerable. So of course, they're by default, the Black community is going to be where you see people looking for outlets left and right. Substance abuse. So you're going to have substance abuse. You're going to have unrealistic fantasy type stuff going on, and you're going to have the sex that gets out of control, and that's where the deviancy comes in. So that's why we're having a discussion, because other people will say, "Oh, y'all using it in the wrong way." They're trying to cope. They start saying it's supposed to be. Let's just say this first off. What is sex? People will say, "Oh, well, sex is when a man and woman get together," and nowadays people say, "Oh, it's when two people get together." Okay, sexual intercourse requires a man and a woman. That's why the word intercourse is in there. The sex act itself, if you want to just say sex in a broad terms, requires two people, but that's not sexual intercourse. Okay, so let's be clear about that. Deviancy in sex comes from a lack, too much, faulty thinking about boundaries and limits, faulty practices based upon unnatural limits, faulty
Quick
information.
question before you go on. When you say faulty practices, I just lost my train of thought. You said faulty practices because of
Faulty practices based upon bad information, faulty practices based upon a lack, faulty practices because there's too much going on, faulty thinking from bad information about alternatives, faulty thinking about boundaries and limits.
It was another word, but basically I wanted to make the correlation with the word that you used, and I'll have to rewind it. But are you using that to segue to the book of Leviticus?
No.
No, okay. I think it was something to do with unnatural, because if you actually read
okay. I said faulty thinking from information about unnatural practices.
Unnatural, yes. There you go. Okay. That's what I wanted to know.
And our discussion is not about a judgment. Our discussion is just about our community and why sex education is okay, but you need more practice. Okay?
Absolutely.
Because there's a bigger. Okay, let's get when I talked about what sex is, let's get the other side, the religious perspective out of it. From most religious perspective, sex is supposed to be between a man and a wife, meaning a female. Okay? And it is supposed to just be between those two once they're married, and you're supposed to abstain at any other time. That's just what they say. That's just what's said. And there are a few scriptures about staying away from perversions. There's a few scriptures about what types of practices the church was doing when Paul was writing to the church, and he was telling them, y'all doing practices that, where, men are sleeping with their father's wife and doing other unnatural things that they shouldn't do, or better yet, crossing boundaries and limits that they shouldn't cross. And when you understand what a demonic influence is that we went over earlier, there's a particular scripture, so maybe somebody can look it up. If I get a chance, I'll look it up. But it talks about when Satan was telling, I believe it's in Job, when he's having a conversation with God, but I may be wrong, but it was some conversation that Satan was having with God, and he was like, you're not going to get he was saying, oh, I'm going to get them. He's like, you're not going to get them. He's like, I'm going to get them because I'm going to come at them from their nature. And when we think about things, that's just how it is. It's our natural things that are in our natural urges when we're not in control, because we're being led by our emotions, that sometimes creates the most trouble for us as people. We good?
Absolutely. I was waiting to see if anyone else had any questions. Okay, so you are under the
That's
schooling that it is for marriage and you should abstain.
that's the church's perspective. Now, that's not my particular perspective. That's the church's perspective.
I'm sorry, but Graham, see, I'm gonna have to start reading these before I post them up. Graham says, when your wee wee is big, it's hard to keep it in your pants. Why is that? Graham, why did you have to do that?
Because of faulty thinking that I just went over. So we'll get to that, Graham.
Okay. Okay, Graham, you keep your faulty wee wee in the chat until we're ready for you, okay? Okay. All right, sir. Let's continue.
All right. Now, there was a particular link I sent to an article that talked about Black women a little bit, and it talked about how Black women are sexualized, and it talked about one of the main particulars why. Now, the article itself was, I won't judge it, but it was talking more about a particular case with a particular singer from our community and the young women that were engaging in sex. Okay. And it said about why that is so accepted. And what it went on to talk about was a particular attitude in America for, it's still present today, but as it started before slavery in America and just got transferred over and then got honed into perfection, basically, because there was a particular governor. Now I'm going to read it from the article, and the article is about the Black community's normalization of pedophilia is troubling.
Okay, and before you go further, Empress said the church is twisted and has made this a perversion.
Yes. Yes. Now let's remember, like we talked about what sex is in the two different definitions and that are existed in our community. But let's look at it as sex is. Sex is the act in which you come here, in which you get to manifest on this plane, on this level. Regardless of what you think about the process, sex is what happens. You come through the womb of your mother. Now, Dr. Phil Valentine has a book called The Wounded Womb. Excellent book. It should be a gift to every Black woman that you know. Instead of buying them other little trinky stuff, buy them that book and tell them to read it. And in the book, he goes over why the whole test tube thing is faulty, because what they found out is that the offspring have issues with becoming impregnated, put it that way. Now I'm paraphrasing. So you got to read the book to get or go. He has a live stream in which he goes over the book. You can type it up on YouTube and look at it. It's about 4 hours long. It is a lot of information. It is very good. But, sex itself is this process. It's a divine process. And by divine, I'm not talking about all holy and the angels are singing and this and that. It could be, depending on who you with and what you're doing. But at the same time, it is a reverent process. It's how we get here. So why is it so demonized? Why is it so taboo? You can't hardly even have a discussion about it around people. If somebody looking at you crazy or saying you're nasty or you shouldn't talk about that in public, or so what's going on? There's only two major drives in the human body. That's reproduction, which is sex, and hunger, which means you got to eat. Everything else is conditional. You can work it out. But food and sex, yeah. When those hit you, those are some defining drives, okay, for the human being. And we're all human beings, so let's get it real. As human beings, the way you get here is through sex. When you see, like Judge Joe Brown says, when you see another human being, you see a successful sex act. Now, we don't think that way, most of us, but that is in essence what's going on. But, you know, so getting back to this article, okay, and the reason I picked what was said in that article, because it's a particular governor, and his attitude is one of the things where Black women, it just shows you how you become too sexualized or seen as sexually deviant just from their existence, okay? These American thought processes reminds us of a troubling quote from a famous Southern governor named Cole Blease in the 20th century. He was governor of South Carolina, the 89th governor of South Carolina, from 1911 to 1915. Now, this governor's pardoned a whole lot of Black and white men who had been convicted of assaulting Black women and girls. And when he made a statement after the pardon, he said, I have a serious doubt as to whether the crime of a crime of that sexual assault can be committed upon a Negro. And for those that are not aware, Negro was the official term of what they call Black Americans in that time period. It has changed over the years. What they call what we've been referred to officially. And by officially, I mean by the U.S. government. Okay. The governor felt that Black women and girls were incapable of being violated because they were immoral beings, and any unwanted sexual advance made towards any Black woman was warranted through the behavior of Black women as a whole. And regardless of age, they should be depicted as just overtly sexual beings. And so we have to remember throughout our history in America, particularly when the time when media became available, whether that was in print media, then later in pictures, in film, now on social media, Black women were depicted as welfare queens and ghetto rats, as they say, or sexually deviant hookers and prostitutes. And that's what people saw when they went to the movies, or when they looked at pictures. They saw sexual pictures of Black women, and they just thought that, because let's face it, if you're not living around Black people, you don't really know how they are. So when they have these magazines and they say, oh, the Black woman, and they got a sexual picture of her, that's the image that's in your head. And then when they talk about it, that's what you think. Okay? And then, like Dr. Cresswell would say, once these images, we see these images in our mind accepts them. Remember, our mind accepts them. We live in a free will universe. So when your mind starts, remember I said, if your mind's not rejecting it, you're accepting it. So when these images that you're seeing on TV in these movies of these overly sexualized Black women, or these misaligned, powerful Black women, and we'll get to that, you're accepting it as your reality. That's why we have to be careful about what we're watching and listening to, because if our mind isn't rejecting it actively, we're accepting that as our reality. Okay. Then it was all the reports by the early social scientists where they claimed that Black people didn't talk about the sexual deviancy in their families and in their community because they didn't want Black people to be viewed as that. They didn't want us to look bad. So in the few examples in the early periods when they were going around in our communities and doing surveys and talking to people and getting information, Black people were very reluctant to talk about people that had done some bad things. Okay. And that's why for a lot of Black men, they don't understand why so many Black women are talking about their stories at this time. And you have to remember that for a lot of women, that has been stifled, whether it's from their own family, the church, their school, and even today, many still don't want to, amongst the correct people, share their story or even report or say when something happened to them. Because there's sometimes, like, like don't come to me and like somebody violated me. Oh, I'm about to go put hands on them. It's over. We don't have to have no discussion, okay? Because I trust that she's not going to say that to me in some game because she's mad at the guy or didn't get what she wanted from him, or she's trying to save her, her reputation, okay? She's saying it to me because something was done to her. And so, being the man I am, that angers me. And I'm like, this dude, he needs to be handled or needs to, not be here. Let's put it that way. Okay. And so you have a lot of black women, a lot of sisters who have men like that in their families or their friends. And so they're reluctant to say anything because they don't want that individual to get into trouble for what they know they're going to do to this person if they find out that it happened. This is real. We don't really discuss that in our community. Now, there's one group that says that's what should be happening. And there's another group that says, oh, well, we got to handle it a little differently. Again, depends on which side of the fence you sit on. There's a way that we can all come together and say, this is how we should handle that. But that is just another reason why it's been stifled in our community. And in that particular thing, it was a report, not a report, I'm sorry, it was a research. And it was talking about talking incest, narratives of dangerous remembering from Stein to Satisfied. And that was written by Doan and Hodges, University of Michigan, back in 2009. And one of the things they said was, like even in 1965, the Moynihan report, it focused on the poor black family as the center of everything. So, and that caused a weak family structure by the woman being more empowered than the man. A lot of that had to do with the economics and the structure. And so nobody wanted to talk about any of the bad stuff that went on because for a certain portion of black people, everything that's wrong with us stems from slavery. And that is a partial truth because there's another side to it. And then there's another side of black people that say, well, we are doing it to ourselves. But that is an excuse. When you hear people saying blame the victim, that's an excuse that people use to get out of their own accountability. So they say, oh, it's a group of deviant black men. So, first you're talking about this strong black woman, but while you have this strong black woman, they allow these deviant black men to exist. So that means they can't really be that strong then because they're not protecting the children. And these deviant men are preying upon the women and playing upon the children. And now you're having illegitimate children. So it's a contradiction in how our community is viewed. Okay. And again, when outside people come to look at your community, that's what happens. Okay.
Quick question. I'm
yes.
listening, but not quite understanding. So where do you believe, from your perspective, the deviance among men, or what's the origin?
That's human behavior. If you get into human psychology, like Dr. Wilson talked about this, and she said there was a time when we didn't really have a lot of deviancy in our community. I mean, it's particularly sexual deviancy because, again, remember I said hunger and the sex drive. Okay, hunger and sex. That's what's driving a lot of folk. Okay, and she talked about when men are made powerless, they seek out ways in which they can have or exercise some power. Okay. Some of the men, you see people trying to normalize certain behaviors a deviancy, because they'll say, "Oh, I was born that way," or that's just what I think about. It shouldn't be bad, or whatever. And no, that's unnatural, and that doesn't make sense. So no, it doesn't. No other natural being is doing that, and you're doing it for a different reason. And sometimes, as men, when they don't have any other power, they don't have a job, they don't have any rights, they don't exert any power in the home. So they turn and, as an adult, they may find some person that is younger and be able to exert power over them. Now, sometimes they do it and try to rationalize it, because the younger person may say, "Yeah, I'll do that," or they'll do it and just be like nothing happened. But we know that it's a violation. Okay. But remember, you create these broken people also when they don't get enough lap time as a child. Up until 7 or 8, you got to give that care and love. When they're small babies, up until I say toddler age, put them on your lap, talk to them, let them sit there. And when they get enough, they'll get down when they get enough. You're not doing nothing, or watching TV is more important than spending time with the child, then maybe you need to think about it. And if you don't want to do that, don't have any, or don't have them around you. And sometimes, I get it. Sometimes it's hard because you got to do stuff, and the kid wants you to, bounce it. Okay. So you have to, try to find some time, and not just mothers, fathers, whoever's around, tell them, hey, put the child in the nap and let them bounce. Sometimes it have to be an older brother or sister, because we have to have a whole show about that, but people don't understand. Your brain doesn't know the difference. And there are different things going on when you're doing that. That's why sitting the child down, so-called lap time, and that could be just bonding things you do with the child. As an infant, you might not have them on the lap. You may have them in your arms and rocking them, or talking to them, or singing to them, okay? Or sitting back in the chair, just holding the baby and rocking. There are things, like Dick Gregory talked about, at the old houses that people remember, there used to be a porch swing, right? And when men and women get into it, and you people, you're going to get into it. It's a battle of wills to be in a relationship. People don't talk about it enough. There's a battle of wills going on. And sometimes that battle can get ugly. And, but we used to know, okay, you go somewhere, go by yourself, don't make him stay there. And you just got to say you want to give him a piece of your mind. Like Reverend Ike said, you can't afford it. Stop it. Just let him go. Okay. But, he can go out on that porch and he sit in that swing, that big porch swing. And he might have a drink, or smoke his pipe, or smoke his cigarette, or these days might smoke the weed or whatever. But he's in that rocking thing and that motion, and it's soothing. Okay? And that soothing will take away and change that state of being and get rid of those emotions. Okay? And you out there, leave him there. If it's cold out there, go, he might fall asleep. Go out there, take a blanket to him, put it on him. You ain't got to say nothing. Go to the next day. We used to have more common sense, because the technology and the loose money and other things have afforded us some things that made us get away from some of the more common sense practices. And that's why I said, less education, talk about it, and more practice. And we're going to get to that.
Okay, I wanted to introduce Information Man Show, very large platform, information show. Welcome, and this is Dr. A.H. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Hey, the Information Man. I keep wanting to call you Ip Man, so sorry about that.
I do the same thing.
Trying to joke, but it's just, I keep wanting to say that. Okay, so get it back to the conversation. So again, Black women, were sexualized prior to slavery coming to the United States. You got to remember, Europeans went to Africa. Now, depending on which side of the fence you are on about either us being here or some of us being right here, we know that somewhere that exchange happened. Okay, so when Europeans went to Africa, if you ever been to Africa, if you haven't been to Africa, Africa is hot. Not like hot like Florida. I'm talking Africa. You know, people used to joke, say Africa hot. Okay, that's hot. So you're not walking around like you might see them, just like when you go to Mexico or some of the other countries in South America, you see them wearing jeans and all this stuff. And you try to put your jeans on there, now you burning up. You're like, how they walking around in these hot jeans and them clothes and this other stuff? I'm burning up, I'm sweating to death. Okay, first off, you're not acclimated to it. And second off, you're right. Certain clothes you're not going to wear in a hot climate, and everybody's body isn't used to it. Now people say, "Oh, you can get used to it." Yeah, but it really may take a while. So when they went to Africa, they saw women, scant in their view, scantily clad. Now, Dr. Sebi used to joke about this all the time. He said when people used to say his mother was a savage, he said, "Yeah, my grandmother was a savage, but she could walk around the jungles in Africa or wherever and naked, and nobody jumped on her. Okay, nobody violated her." He said, could your grandmother walk around naked?" That says a whole lot about civilization. Okay, so the Europeans saw them as being, uncivilized and uncouth because they didn't have clothes covering their body and all the stuff, even though they was dying from fever and heat exhaustion and heat stroke over there in those big clothes they was wearing all there looking stupid. Same thing when they came to the Americas, dealing with who they called Indians, who was dark like us, who was us, according to, certain other research, but that's a whole nother space. But they were justifying their behaviors because when they went over to Africa, those Europeans, they were jumping on those black women and lusting after those black women, and so they had to find a way to justify violating them. So they said, "Oh, it's the woman. She's sexual. She's so I believe the word is licentious. I may be wrong, but they used that to justify what they was doing." Okay. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about before we get to the real meat of our discussion tonight or this morning is everybody should remember good times. Okay? James Evans, Florida Evans, Michael, JJ, Thelma, Willona. Okay? Well, there was a show in Britain called The Fosters. All right? And that show, back in 1970, what was it, 1976? 1976 is when it came on. Only lasted a year. The show was about a black man. It was basically the British good times, because the show was based upon the patriarch of James Evans Jr. Now, over there, they focused like Good Times, Florida. Esther Rolls' character was the central character, the main character that everything else revolved around. And in their version, it was the man, it was the father. His name was Samuel. On the show, his name was Samuel Foster, played by an actor named Norman Beaton. But it was the same thing, same amount of people, same Willona type character, just different names. Now, I'm saying that to say, like I talked about in the media, they always portray us in these various ways. And, that has been going on for a long time, and not just in America, but they use American example in order to further that goal. Now, there was the very first show of that series was called Sex in the Black Community. And it was, a sitcom, so, supposed to be a comedy. And that show was about the older brother getting a bottle of mouthwash before he went on a date. Remember people doing the whole toothpaste thing and then kissing, like, you want to go on a date, so you want your breath fresh, okay? And then the younger daughter being involved with a man that was 21. So she was a teenager. The guy was 21. So people being upset about, the family being upset about that. And then an older man, the father changing his mind about a so-called filthy book that he didn't want to look at first, but now he changed his mind, he wanted to look at it. So when you think about that, you think about things that these are naturally occurring things, but they make us, the bottom of the joke in those, okay? Because all throughout history, women are particularly married men that were older, and there's provisional reasons for that and political reasons for that, because marriage is political. Let's stop all the games that people play about marriage. Marriage is political. And I don't mean Democrat and Republican so much as it was a structure to gain power, to bring families together, to maintain or increase wealth, okay, for protection, okay, and they were arranged, and sometimes arranged very good, sometimes not so good, but most of the time it was good, so it was good for everybody, for the couple to stay together, okay? All that, the woman didn't have no say, that's not really correct. It's not really correct to talk about it that way, but that's about marriage. And then about the guy changing his mind about a so-called filthy book. Well, if you call it a filthy book, I guess nobody really would want to read a filthy book. But maybe it was a book covering some different sexual topics that, depending on who you are, you would say is filthy. And at first, I may look at it and say, yeah, that's filthy. But then when I see what is really in the book, I say, well, that's not filthy. That's good information. All right, so we covered all that stuff, all that boring stuff. When you get out the way. And that's another reason why I say sex education. We need practice, not education. Because all that theory, all that topic, everything else, people go to sleep. I don't want to hear. What do you say? Okay, okay, everybody stand up. Let's get our breath going. Okay, put your hands out. Okay, give the person next to you a hug. How's that feel? Count to 5. Okay, turn around. Get the other person a hug. So now you're doing stuff. And now your mind is getting ready to start understanding the practice. Because you learn 2 ways. Physiologically, to get the body in order, learn by doing. Talk. Okay, now it's time to do. Now, a lot of times when people start talking sex education, people like, oh, we can't teach the kids that, where you going to have kids having sex with each other? No, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is getting into practice. Now, the whole thing with sex is you're not going to save anybody. Remember, in the beginning, I said solo. It starts and ends with you. It's your individual journey. There is really no right or wrongs. Okay? It's which way you choose.
Before you go further, Dr. A.H., I started this, but I have to get your response. Graham has said, I'll likely never get married. If you knew how many married women I've been romantic with, you'd understand why. What's crazy is most of the married women I've been with were in good marriages. What do you think about that?
I understand where he's coming from with that.
Thank you, Graham.
As a man, for many men, we sometimes, women kind of learn, when we're coming up, the girls kind of learn more about the boys and men than the boys learn about the women. Because as young women, Steve Harvey made a joke a long time ago, said, or it was in his book, didn't like it, but the statement was more true than not, that from the time a girl hits her puberty all the way up to pretty much till she's gone or she gets too old that people aren't interested in her, she is receiving attention from men, majority of time seeking her attention in a sexual way or for sexual purposes. Okay, so women really, and girls should, have to learn and be taught that. And that's one of the things I'm talking about, is practice up until that point. You don't start talking to them and teaching them certain practices at that point at puberty. It has to be a progression, and it has to be constant. It has to be constant. Okay. So his statement is basically talking about once men start seeing some of the shoddy, and remember I said the deviant behaviors in our community. And if you're a man and you start seeing that, you're like, what do you see here on the streets? Let's get into this discussion. Let's as they say, keep it black. Let's get into these discussions. What do you hear on the street? Oh man, these girls, they use the H word. So I'm really trying to be really politically correct, but what do they say? These hoes ain't loyal. What do the women say? These men for everybody. Okay, and what that just means is the people aren't being exclusive. There's a term called cheating. The word cheating comes from a word that was escheat, and what escheat referred to was a person being person's property kind of being taken over by the state illegally. Okay, I have to look that up, but that's where the term cheating came from. It didn't have to do with you, as we say, stepping out on your significant other. Okay, cheating is an improper term to really use, not because they don't like the word cheating. We know what people mean when they say cheating, but you need to get in a better context because words do have meaning. Most women want the men that they're married to, meaning you've taken the vows, you are presented, whether you're talking about being presented before God or presented before the public. It's a social contract, and you want the man to be exclusive to you, meaning you want the man to only engage in sexual intercourse with you because you don't want him making anyone else pregnant. You don't want him taking his resources to another woman, meaning another household. You don't want the bonds between you and him to weaken to where he doesn't care about you or care about what happens to you. Fidelity has to do with loyalty. Loyalty has to do with being about your business. None of that means exclusive. So I was going to get to it later, but I'll say it now. Women, whether how young you are, how old you are, from now on, when you're talking to, whether it's the man that's been in your life or a new man or any other man, and they're looking to be with you, and you have issues with men being with other people because, these men for everybody, or they always out in the street, or I know that he got another woman and he's trying to talk to me or do whatever, you let him know you're looking for something exclusive. Okay? Now.
Okay, real quickly. Andrea says, that's a shallow, egotistical control freak. And Graham follows up with, same as us men, I've come to learn that women can cheat on their husband or man and still truly love them. But most people have desires that they want fulfilled, and sometimes the one they love
can't fulfill them. Right. Remember the 3 questions I referenced last week. There's only 3 questions in a relationship. Does your partner know what you want or desire? Are they able to provide it or help you get it? And are they willing? If they say no, or answer any one of those questions negatively, you need to schedule some time to sit down and have a very deep discussion about your relationship. If they say no or answer negatively to 2 or all 3 of those questions, then guess what? You need to be smiling, you need to be happy that you got that information, and you need to create yourself an exit plan. And you need to get out safely, and you need to get out reasonably. But you need to go ahead and part ways, because eventually it's going to happen, and it's probably going to happen in an ugly way. That's just how it goes. We spend too much time making each other miserable before people split up. You see people arguing and fighting, but I don't want him to get the house, and I don't want this and that, and she don't take my kids and others. Stop it. And then you think you're going to have something nice in the future with someone else, and you created all this negative energy. You carrying all this stuff. But what we're going to be talking about tonight is better sexual practices and more practice. So we're not going to get stuck on that. So that's where that comes from, with the whole women stepping out on the man, or men out here cheating. Okay. And it's not just men, and it's not just women. It's both. And it's not about one doing it more than others. I know that there's studies and other people saying, oh, well, women do it more and all this other stuff. You know what? Then maybe we should have better discussions and more practice. Then we don't have these issues. Okay? So moving on. So Al, you talking about less sex education, better practices. Yes. And let's get this out the way first. People get all up in arms when you start talking about teaching children about sex. And when I say children, I mean teenagers. Because most people can agree, or should agree, or have some common sense to know, what are you getting into these deeper sexual conversations with children pre-puberty for? That's inappropriate, and it doesn't make sense. There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. You could say information is knowledge. The application of that information is wisdom. They can't get to wisdom. So giving them the information is pointless, and it's confusing, because a child is still a child. They have a child thought process. That's why puberty, people get all crazy, because there's all kinds of different things going on. Your hormones are going on and all kinds of stuff. So first, we need to get a better understanding ourselves as adults about what's going on. And a lot of people say this, well, how you going to get the kids to do right and you can't get the adults to do right? And that's true. You're not. That's why I said that do as I say, not as I do, doesn't work. So we need less of the talk and more of the practice. Once a person has crossed the sexual threshold, there's no going back. Okay? There's no going back. Just as I said, you have to be in the present. There's no going back. That's why you have this whole, like when I said SVU was one of the longest running shows, is because you got a lot of people, and SVU mainly deals with what? Child stuff, sexual deviancy, because it's sexual crimes, it's sex crimes. Okay? So there's a lot of people who identify with that, because there's a lot of stuff going on that on one hand we can say is deviant. On the other hand, we need to understand where that's coming from, because it doesn't necessarily have to turn into this negative, bad, victimized experience. It can be an experience, and we can learn from it, and we can move on. Okay? So when we're talking about sex, once a person crosses that threshold, whether it's two teenagers that have sex, it's two adults, somebody violates a younger person, there's no going back. It's like walking through the curtain at Wizard of Oz. You look behind the curtain, you see the wizard, the guy, you can't not know that. Yeah, you might go in the back, back out front and be mesmerized by the show that he's putting on. But you look behind the curtain, you know that it's a guy back there doing that. It's not magic anymore to you. Okay? So that's what we have to know. So we say, how are you going to get to more practice? What are you talking about? Most times with men and women, largely there's this disconnect because the woman feels like her security is based upon the man being exclusive with her. And when she does engage in sexual intercourse with the man, she wants that to be quality, meaning she wants to get her maximum pleasure from it. She wants to be engaging and loving. That is feminine. That is strong. That's feminine. That is well-rounded and expressive. The feminine is expressive. Stoic is male. The feminine is expressive. Feminine wants to take her time and go through and this and that. The male is focused. That's why it's militaristic as male, like Aries in war. Militaristic. I just want to get it done, get it quick. Okay. So when you see that behavior in women, you know that that's unnatural. I don't care how many people want to tell you what they believe about behavior that isn't natural. Okay? Now, no, that doesn't mean every woman wants you to throw out a bunch of rose petals and, have these lights going on and soft music and take some champagne and, we're going to have a little discussion and we're going to talk, and, a little baby talk in there and, we're going to do some little kissing and this and that. Now, yeah, that can be nice and that can be fun. So when I'm talking about expressive, what I mean is it needs to be full. You need to be there, present for her. That's what they're looking for. That's what the feminine is looking for. Okay? Men have problems with the amount of sex they're getting, meaning the frequency, how often. Okay? Sometimes the quality is the last thing on their mind. They just want the Empress, reciprocity is nice, but there's a point to get to that. That's a higher point. We'll get to that. But what we're talking about right now is the dichotomy, is what the real issues are. Okay? So, and when you're talking about the sex education and how we get to more practice, and less the sex education, they're going to have a talk about the sex, how you can be a good lover to your man, or how you can just blow her mind out and all this. And yeah, that's nice, but you're not going to get that from talking. Like you have, like in the mainstream, there's all these classes and workshops and seminars they have about how to talk to women, how men can talk to women. And they call them pickup artists and all this other stuff. But how good is that when you don't know what to do, when you then use all these tricks and tips to get the woman's interest in you and get her to go somewhere with you? Not very much, right? I think I would be a little ticked off if you told me, I'm going to have a wonderful ride on a roller coaster, and we get there and you got a go-kart and we go around the block real quick. That ain't no roller coaster ride. What you mean? You wasting my time. And then after so many tell you you're going on a roller coaster ride and you go around the block in a go-kart, you like, these go-kart hustlers, they ain't, so I'm going to start playing my own game, since, they giving people money to go around in a go-kart, and they giving money to the people that have the best looking bodies and the best looking this, then I'm going to do that. But, that's another thing about the faultiness, the faulty thinking that goes into this deviant behavior. So you measure frequency by how many times something happens. Yeah, that's nice, Graham. Uh, in essence, you're really supposed to. But okay, frequency is measured by how many times something happens within a certain time period, not just how many times it happens. Like I may tell you, I had sex 100 times last year. Now we know it's 365 days in a year. Now I don't tell you the time period, so I could have been somewhere for a month and had sex 100 times, and then for 11 months I haven't had sex. So when you ask talking about frequency, remember it's important that you're looking for a time period. Now, when you're talking about quality, you're talking about the return you get from either what you are purchasing or what you're getting involved in. Usually how you measure that from repeat customers. Ladies know what I'm talking about. And renewals. Meaning ladies know what I'm talking about. Okay? Fellas know what I'm talking about too. When you don't get invited back anymore, or you're not your invitation for dating or proposal for getting together isn't honored anymore, okay, or honored repeatedly, then you know, okay, maybe it's something with the quality going on. Okay, why is that important? The practice, getting more practice, gives everybody what they want. Men are not going to get to quality sex without having it. Women always say they want a man to be a good lover. Guess what? Men who are good lovers have a lot of experience doing. Being a good lover. Like how they say riding a bike. When you see the kid out there that's riding and he can do tricks to get there, how often do you think the kid ride that bike? Okay? Sexual prowess or your skill as a male is built upon you understanding and learning a woman's body. And while all women are different, from the general aspect, you have to know the general aspects so that you can get into being able to find out the different things particular to that particular woman. And then you have to have the skill with timing and pressure, because that's what it is, timing and pressure, to bring about some quality results for her. Okay?
Quick question, sir.
Yes.
You have all of the experience in riding a bike. You can do it with your eyes closed. Well, let's just say, like the greatest or the GOAT in any sport, you have that one off day and you don't get that quote unquote call back for a man, because I am not. Does that do something to your ego, or could it?
All sexual engagements does something to the ego for both males and females.
Okay.
Sex is the most intimate, other than childbirth, one of the most intimate encounters you can have as a human being. Period. Okay? Sister Shahzad Ali said something wonderful in one of her lectures. She said, do you understand, as human beings, you're the only species that can have sex face to face? Do you understand, as human beings, which I learned in my Tantra studies, that the eye gazing is a part of what gets you into this I'm falling in love experience? You know, in the movies when they say, oh, look into my eyes, and you know, like when Dracula's hypnotizing the women, they're gonna bite him in the neck and they look into his eyes and he's seducing them. Okay? You're not gonna get away from that. You're a human being. You can fight it, you know, like when people are talking to you and they don't want to look you in the eye, and we know it's something shady going on. What do you think about when somebody won't look in the eye and you want to engage in sex with them? Come on. Okay. But all of those encounters has a play on your head. Okay. And it can trip you up. So remember when I talked about doing the positive self-talk, doing your affirmations, doing your breath work, maybe if you want to do your meditations or doing centering prayer, having a strong sense of faith, having a spiritual or religious foundation can help you because certain things can trip you up. Okay, it's one of the most intimate encounters you're going to have. So if it doesn't play out correct, it can be damaging. Okay, but it doesn't have to last. If you look at it as just an encounter, it's not the last. It wasn't the first. It doesn't have an effect on anything else I do unless and usually what it is some other aim that's going on. So now because you had the bad sexual encounter, that person isn't a good candidate for getting into. Nowadays we get into a deeper relationship because of what's going on. But usually it's now that could put your marriage in jeopardy or your relationship in jeopardy. For some people it could be messing with their money. For some people it could be messing with the opportunity they were looking to get. So you just have to know that.
Okay. Andrea says transfer of energy, serious electricity. And Graham follows up with inside the eyes is where the truth lies. You just got a thumbs up. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Graham. And earlier, thank you, Information Man Show.
All right. So let's get to something here. So how are we going to get to more practice? First thing is, let's be mature. We have to, especially in our community, get to a serious level of maturity. If we're going to clean it up, not about cleaning again. It's not about cleaning. I'm going to clean up the neighborhood. I'm going to clean up the Black community, and we got to do this. I'm going to get everybody in the state of Georgia to be having sex properly. Good luck with that one. Okay. You got to start with, it starts with you. And sometimes that's only as far as you can go. Now, if you have a gift, you have some charisma, you can maybe do some workshops to give a little information and give a lot of practice. Again, more practice. Okay. Sex is, again, to be thought of as divine and regarded, not as just cheapened, just beastie act. When people are riding along and walking along, you see little kids see dogs having sex, they laugh and they point their finger and they or they say, oh, and they get shy and blush and turn away. But adults don't even think about it. They keep on going because they just say, okay, it's just two dogs. That's what dogs do. Okay. But when it comes to sex amongst human beings, we're a little more than that animal. This demonic world has sought to turn us into the beast. And we'll get to that because that's how they want you to view yourselves, and that's how it was viewed before. Okay? Now, our ultimate pleasure over pain is to feel good. We live in a capitalistic society. Sex sells because you can't get away from it, okay? And money, you got to have money to survive. So, and get what you want and what you want to enjoy. And so while you're surviving, it makes more survival possible when you have that money. And so therefore, pleasure over pain is the ultimate goal. And therefore, sex is the most ultimate pleasure you're going to have. Now, I know there are some serious drug addicts out there that will disagree with that. And since I haven't had that experience, I will take their word for it that yes, you talking about that sex. And I have dealt with a lot when I worked on the street and dealing with drugs and dealing with drug addicts and making drug busts and all of that other stuff. I can attest that they were probably correct in their assessment because, they didn't care about the sex. They cared about the drug. No matter how much money they had, no matter what was going on. That tells you about something going on with them synthetic drugs in the mind. Nobody comes back from doing a mushroom or ayahuasca trip talking about they don't want to have sex no more. But I heard many heroin and crack and meth people, even though they use sex to get the money or in exchange for the drugs, they're not interested in the sex. It don't mean nothing to them. Okay? But sex is the ultimate pleasure, and therefore in this capitalist society, that's what's driving. So that means the cheapened version of sex, so it's not regarded like it needs to be. Again, it's the process in which we get here. Anything that's that important, you would think would be regarded. Okay? So, when they say it starts with you, you got to determine what's important to you individually. And you build from that. Self-responsibility, and then if you want to include your partner, and then you can go to your family, and then you can go to your friends or your extended family. And when I say sexual practice, all sexual practice don't mean you having sexual intercourse. There's certain practices you can do that will help you, because again, men become good lovers through their frequency, and women become good lovers through understanding their quality. Okay? And most women, they want the men to be good lovers. Personally, I've had experiences in my youth up until a certain point where women exclaim some things about, oh, there are certain men that women, like Graham pointed out, would step out with because they could be with that man and then they would be okay for a certain amount of time because they weren't being pleased by their spouse or regular partner. And it's interesting because I would always ask women that I knew whether they were an intimate partner with me or not about that, and why many don't just say to the man or work with the man. And for some it's an impossibility because of as you had brought up, though, the whole ego thing that goes on. If you remember the movie Forgiven, that whole movie was about that prostitute laughing at that man because of the size of his penis when he came in to have sex with her. That whole movie, if you go back and look at that movie, that Clint Eastwood movie that won all those awards, that whole movie was based upon him feeling like he was ridiculed when he went to have sex with her. Okay? Now, and we could debate about if it was proper or not and all this other stuff, but in essence, we can see how people, that is a real thing. Okay? So it's sometimes hard to get to a space to let a man know he needs to, as they say on the street, up his game. Okay? He needs to learn his techniques better. Again, that timing and pressure. But if you ain't got the experience, if you do what the church say, everybody say chase till you're married. You got two people who don't know anything who get together and then they start having sex. And yeah, you could figure it out, but maybe by the time you figure it out, it's going to be, I had so many bad times with you, I just want to be away from you. And that's real. I remember when I first moved out of the country, I would encounter many older couples in their 60s and 70s and 80s. And I would ask, and the women weren't having sex with the men, and it wasn't because of age. And I would say, what is that about? Because I wouldn't want to be in that position. So I would ask certain people about things that I knew were willing to share some information, and they were just, they didn't desire it anymore. They didn't, which to me wasn't natural. So I was like, how do you get, where do you get, it doesn't mean you have to have sex all the time. So that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is there's no drive anymore. When there's no drive, that's unnatural. And now there are reasons for that. Sometimes medical, sometimes mental, sometimes spiritual, sometimes relational, meaning the person you with, the energy isn't lined up right, and you just can't get to that space. But it is real. That's why you have to Anyway, that's why you have to uh, ask those questions, and not just one time. You have to have certain times you check in with each other and be honest. And Dick Gregory said this. His daughter came to him and she wanted to write a report about, she had to write a report about people being in love. And so she was like, "Oh, I want to hear about how you and Mama met, and I'm gonna write a report about this and that." He said, "You might not want to write a report about that." He said, "When I met your mother, I was just looking to have some sex." That was where he used some colloquial terms. He didn't say that. He said, "I was looking to get some, you know what," and then the daughter was like, "Oh well, I'll just go ask somebody else." And but in the interview he was doing, he said, people get it messed up. It's not about being in love. It's about, can you be lovable? Because many of us miss that. Can you be lovable? Because a lot of times when people meet, they're not thinking about being together long term and all this other stuff. And today we see that playing out in negative, adverse, perverse ways and deviant ways. Because that's the real reality. People aren't looking at the long term of it because they're not being talked about, and it's not being promoted in a way that's realistic. And then therefore you can't even get to having a discussion about getting to more practice or getting together to build that. Okay, so how am I going to do that? So you're talking about money. So say you want to talk to your husband and you want to get more sexual practice. You don't say, "Oh well, we need to have sex more because you need to learn how to do the sex." Well, that ain't gonna go over well. Or you're gonna go to your wife or your girlfriend and say, "We need to have sex more because I need to have more sex from you because you're not giving me as much as I want." This and usually that just doesn't go over well either. Okay. Every once in a while, people meet people that they can bully or they can manipulate, and then we hear all about it years later, and this person wants to stay in the past and talk about what happened. But, again, your power is now. I'm not saying what went on is right, but, that's life. Things happen that sometimes ain't right. Don't mean you have to keep living it. You got to keep moving. Okay. But you find the proper conversation. See, it's an energy. Reverend Ike would tell you about how you're using your divine energy. You heard other people would talk about how you're using your vibration. Okay, the good sex will put you in a high vibration. Napoleon Hill talked about this. When you learn how to channel your sexual drive, you don't have to, every time you so-called get horny, go and have sex. You channel that drive into some energy that you can get some things done that you should be focused on. But when you go to engage sexually, use that energy. So you should be having it with the frequency and the quality that you both need, whether that's a partner you arrange some stuff with or a partner that you're already together with in a committed form of relationship. Again, that's why it's hard to get to more practice, because we have an unrealistic view of what sex is and how we can get to better things. Okay. In ancient days and higher communities, there were places where people could go and engage in practices that they could learn about that frequency and quality we talked about. And not necessarily the brothels. I'm not talking about the brothels, because people talk about trafficking and how it's bad for women. And the other side of that is some women that want to do that it's not talked about. And it doesn't matter if you think it's right or wrong. Why, if that's something that they can do to make money, do you demonize it and make it criminal? And some places have decriminalized it. Why do you not make it more so that you could have wholesome, more loving, and I do use the word loving, which, okay, we could say appreciative experiences, and that exchange between each other safely, building some good energy, getting the releases they need, which again, getting rid of the stress. Nothing gets rid of stress like the sex. Nothing, 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 nothing. I don't care what you say, nothing. Okay? Because it's working and processes are working in your body. It's not just the genitals that are doing everything. It's not just the brain getting stimulated or picking up the stimulation. Our complete body physiological processes going on during the sex. Okay. So there were places where people, it was regarded, and it was a reality because the people came to that understanding, and they gave better sex for the woman and enough sex for the man. There are some times in our relationships where, Shahzad said this, a lot of women aren't being honest in our community. You don't want to be bothered with a man all the time. So you get all up in arms and mad and angry if whether he did it as a one-time thing, or you find out he's been doing it in secret, or it's some kind of regular practice where he got a whole nother family across town or in another state or whatever, and he's been engaging sexually with another woman, bottom line. And women flip out and this and that, and you should say, okay, as a woman, you know you don't want to be bothered with him all the time anyway. So why not be honest with the other woman? Because you're either going to be that woman in the house or you're going to be the other woman. In our community, because so many black men have been incarcerated, so many black men have been deleted, so many black men have gone missing, so many black men are incapable because of either faulty thinking, substance abuse of any sort. They're just not, whether you just wanted to engage with them sexually and not form a relationship, they're not available. Okay, that's a reality for a lot of particularly younger black women are seeing it now in bigger droves. And that's why that whole passport world thing was so shaking to people, because certain things in our community are realities. And so we need to understand that. And it doesn't mean a free for all either. That them men get to do everything they want. No. That's not what we're talking about. Okay.
Well, what about the men that has been institutionalized, and for the population or a percentage of the population who are now back in society are, and I'm trying to make sure that I word my sentences and thoughts properly to not offend, who are torn between loving two, meaning two gender.
Right. So we'll get to that part. What I will say is, again, those three questions, and then there are things that, because you brought up conditions that help you know that, a lot of times, especially in our community, Dr. Randy Shaw would say this all the time. Look, we just lie. We just lie. Black men lie and black women lie. Stop pretending. But people are lying. And people are lying because they want to get what they want to get, and they don't want to be honest, because the times they have been honest, they've been hit over their head with either rejection or some ridicule that they like, well, I'm not going to do that. Empress, we'll get to that too. But again, what I say, if your partner says no, that's one of those three questions. That's something you want, something they are able to do, and something they are and they're willing to do. So it's something you want, they're able to do it, but they're not willing. So that means you got to have a discussion. And then when you go over that and they say, well, you think I'm able, but I'm not able, and this is why. And that's why I'm not willing. So Empress, you got three. I gave you the answer. You had to have a conversation. They're either willing or they're not. And if they're not willing, The next thing is, okay, are they able to do it, or are they able to help you get it? Meaning, okay, you ain't willing to do it. Are you able to help me get what I want? Okay, now we got to have another discussion because well, I don't really done that. That means now they answer two to both questions, which means, okay, guess what? You see me going out the door and not coming back. Now, the reality in our community is we depend on each other, so that could be very hard. And you stuck in our thinking, we might be stuck with somebody that I'm not getting what I want. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. This isn't fair. It's not fun. I'm not feeling pleasure. And it's what I really want. It's not like, okay, I can live without it. I don't want to live without it, and you shouldn't have to. It's a free will universe. So you either can help me get what I want, or you're gonna be willing to give me what I want. And if not, I got an exit plan. But when you start having those discussions, you bring up the realities, because what did I say first? We're in the capitalistic world. Pain over pleasure. That's what I mean, pleasure over pain, and that's what we're driving on. Okay? And so you let them know, look, it's gonna be detrimental for both of us for this not to work. So let's talk about the practice, and let's talk about what I want and the ability to do it and your willingness. You just got to get crafty. Use your common sense, get crafty, have the conversation. You'll get there, and they'll realize, maybe I need to do something. Yeah. And the more they do it, the better they get at it. So more practice once they start, because they're going to start.
If you look back at the book of Leviticus, some of these things are frowned upon. And also, in some churches, they're frowned upon as well.
Okay, so let's get to that.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And Graham, I am not posting that. I understand where you're coming from, but I'm not posting that.
Okay, let's look.
But I got you.
I don't use the word balance, because balance really means fairly judged or presented, taking everything into account. Okay, equilibrium is the calmness in that. Okay, can you get what you really want? Yes. You don't have to do no bargain basement and this and that, is no fairness and all this other stuff. Yeah, you got to work at that. So you're not going to override the nature. That's the first thing. Stop, I can be strong enough. I can not do it, and this and that. Okay, what did we say last time? Things are going to come at you. Sometimes stuff come at you that you don't want, because you put so much focus on not wanting it that you are putting energy into it and you're bringing it to you. We forget that. Energy is energy. The energy doesn't really have, it's like saying when people talk about magic, black magic or white magic. Magic is magic. Magic isn't black or white. It's energy, and energy don't have a black or white. Wherever you focus it is what it's going to go to do. So if your vibration is on, I'm not going to do that, and you keep focusing on that, guess what you're going to bring to you? That's why protesting sometimes don't work. Why you putting energy into something you don't want? The best thing you can do when somebody does something you don't want is you hit them where it hurt by not doing all that stuff. By not going out there. You can come together. If you can come together and do that, you can come together and put all the money in a pot and build a little business to give some people some jobs, so they won't be doing stuff where the cops had to mess with them, and now the cop wound up killing them because they out doing something trying to get some money. Stop it. Okay,
you said that the conversation must be had, but we also know that oftentimes people aren't honest, or they may embellish as to make themselves to be that man or that woman that will send you to places you've never been. But when it's all said and done, it was just an embellishment. Either they don't partake, as Empress said, or they won't partake, or they don't know what they're doing.
Okay. So you have sex for three reasons, sexual intercourse particularly. There's sexual intercourse and there's sexual play. Okay? Sexual intercourse, sexual play, sexual stimulation. Sexual intercourse is between a man and a woman. Sexual play is between the two genders that are same. It's not intercourse. Okay? Because sexual intercourse is can lead to procreation. Two genders can't do that. Okay, that's why sexual intercourse is specific, like I said at the beginning. In our world today, we're living a reality in which those conversations, if you're going to talk about sex, you have to have them. Whether you're on a religious standpoint and you say, I don't believe in that because my religious code is this, and this is what I choose to follow. So you are upfront with the person you're dealing with, so they know if I'm not doing what's in that religious code, then we're going to have a problem because this is what this person I want to be my partner is going to follow. Now, if you're free to be me and thinking, and you say, well, I like this and I like that. A lot of times, yes, people won't say that up front because they know once they admit something that the other person may not like or is too controversial, then that is going to cut them off from what they want, which is a sexual engagement with that person. That's especially in our community where things are still very taboo, where people still frown upon certain things because there's still this very big religious spiritual preference. Now, some people believe that's from the source, and some people believe that's just the brainwashing we got. I would say pick your side, but choose carefully, because some things, there are no coincidences, okay? I'm just put it that way. Sexual stimulation can be visual, can be verbal, can be from the auditories, from the smells.
That's what I was about to ask. And this is a grown and adult conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm celibate and I have been since 2018. So I don't have those issues. But at one point, I was in the world. So let me ask you, Dr. A.H., could it be for both men and women? I'm sorry. Let me get this out. I'm trying really hard, but I promise you I may chuckle. Could it be that an experience with either a man or a woman from the senses, as you just demonstrated, been so traumatic? And I'm not embellishing. I'm laughing, but I'm serious, because I've had these conversations that they could love their partner and may want to, but because of a past situation, they have not been able to get over it, if you will, and they're not willing to again because they were mortified to the point where they just can't at this time.
Okay. Remember, your power is now. Remember what I said about your power being now in the present. You can plan for the future, for tomorrow. You use yesterday or whatever happened as a reference point. Remember I said some people don't do that and they're reliving the past. And yes, it could be so much of a thing in their brain. It's not to label anybody and not to say what's right or wrong. That's why the whole conversation about sex education, less sex education, more practice is more important, because the healing needed doesn't take place. Let me say this. Talk therapy doesn't work. Talk therapy doesn't work. Most people use it. You know why? Because a lot of talk therapy is not one-on-one, it's group. And you know what you can do in a group? You can hide out in a group. and you can find a little story or tell your story, and you can feel comfortable because it's a group and this and that. But having to talk one-on-one, a lot of people, a lot of times we don't remember the first thing I said, and it's a whole nother discussion. But one of the discussions I suggested was about how we don't go and seek out help. We do a lot of patch and covering, but we don't get the help and the healing we need. One of the reasons we don't get the healing we need is because we keep farting around with the wrong thing. That's why action. Remember that song? I want action. If you're old enough, you remember that song. You have to do some things. Me and my wife, back in about 7 years ago, we took some practices and we kind of watered them down for our folk, because our folk, they're not going to pay a lot of money and go through a lot of the study. That's just a part of what has happened to us. We've been so traumatized and lied to and scammed and bent over, so for Black folk, you got to have something that's not, that Black folks can't think and do this for anybody get crazy. Okay, it's just that we need something like, come on, man. We don't have all the like I only got a couple of days off. I don't have time to go. I don't have the luxury of the money to go to a week or a month-long seminar where I can do the practices and I get a little stuff on the theory and we eat good food and it's nice and it's quiet and I don't have to focus down. We may have a little time, whether it's a few hours or a couple of days, like, look, so I got to get what I can get and give me some simple practices that I can get up every morning and I can do a couple of things that help me get through the day and get me more. And that, as people like to say, balance, but I say equilibrium. When I can get into that space, so I can become a better lover. And from a better lover, I'm a better husband, better father, better brother, better sister, what have you. Okay. So you have to get to the healing. You have to do some physiological practices. Your brain doesn't know the difference. Yes, there's a point when you have to talk because there's power in the voice. You have to express some stuff to get it out. But the healing is going to come from your physiological practices, from you getting down there and stretching and doing your breath work, from you doing certain stretches, from you having hands put on you. Remember, even the Bible talked about laying on the hands, okay? And not going to massage envy. That ain't what we're talking about. We're talking about some very specific moves and different things, some different techniques to help get that stuff out. Then there's other practices. Remember I said sexual intercourse, sexual play, and sexual stimulation. Okay, one of the things about the Tantra is you learn different stimulating things about the body. And therefore, you can do certain exercises with a partner or with someone you trust that can help get rid of. See, there's things going on in our brain we don't really get. We just know that after we do something, we start feeling better. And the more we do it, the better we feel. And then we're not thinking about that thing. Personally now, I'm talking personally, because I've been into this stuff most of my adult life. I was the kid that back when I was 17, 18, in the back of magazine, you couldn't go to yoga studios and go to get tantra training or new age type training, all this stuff back in the day. Back in the day, you had to send off to cut out stuff from the back of the magazine. And I don't mean a sex magazine, I mean like a different magazine, but sometimes the sex magazines are having, and send off to places in California and other places to get information, go to workshops in Arizona and Nevada and California, out there, Seattle, all those places to get information, and then do the practices with people that know the practices, know what they do, so you can learn how to do them yourself. And then when you know them, you can teach someone else how to do them. Just like you go to football, some coaching, sports coaching, hair coaching, how to do hair, all the other stuff is all the same stuff. But once you say anything about sex, people lose their mind because they're either so traumatized, or they so, oh, it's taboo, I can't talk about it, or they so into the Bible or their church that, oh, my pastor said, if you're doing anything other than this and this and this, then you sinning. Actually, the Bible doesn't say. I heard a great sermon by Pastor Nathaniel Bronner of the Bronner Brothers down Ark of Salvation Church in Atlanta, Georgia, and he did a wonderful sermon about holding on to what you got. And and he was talking about the marriages. And one of the things he said in that was, the Bible doesn't say anything about what you can do with your partner. The only thing it talks about is you're not supposed to have sex with them on their menses. But other than that, what you do with your partner is what you do with your partner. As long as you keep the marriage bed undefiled. The marriage bed undefiled. Other than that, I mean, catching somebody else in your marital bed just seems kind of odd spiritually, don't it? If you just use your common sense. But anyway, what he brought up specifically was, if you're married, it's not fornicating, and you are free to do whatever you're going to do with your partner, whatever y'all want to get into. That is your husband, that is your wife, and y'all supposed to give each other pleasure, just like Paul say. And what is that scripture when he talk about, if you're not praying, I think Peter, it's a time for prayer, and it's a time for you to be in the world. And one of the sayings in the country church used to be, don't be so spiritually minded that you know earthly good. Some people so spiritually minded, they ain't worth a hoot down here where we gotta carry up. You gotta carry on your life. All the people, well, what you doing? I'm waiting on the sector of move, because you're not doing what you need to do. By example, action, get to the practice. So if you, and I have heard many women, I have been with women when I was practicing things, and I would introduce them to different modalities and different techniques. They would go off of their meds, because a lot of people take meds for different issues. They would stop having certain physical issues. They would definitely get the release they needed, because that's one of the things when we're talking about that quality. It's not just orgasm. You can have orgasm without release. Release is when you're letting go all of that. But you got to be skilled to do that. As the brothers would say on the street, you got to have some skills. You have to be able to get to that point. So if I'm in the mad rush of the world and I'm trying to get a quickie and we doing our little 10-minute deal, you think you're going to get a release from that? Stop it. And then that's how you get into the deviation, because now you need little certain things, or now you need to try this because you're doing it. Stop it. We don't know what it is. That's why we're doing the wrong thing. Empress, you're right, but again, that's side A. Side B is spiritual melded with the physical. Okay, so don't come to me with the harps and flowers and the angels singing and this and that if you ain't taking the nightie off, and ready to get our bodies together and do the things we need to do to bring each other pleasure. Part of the sex is either procreation, pleasure bonding, or release. 3 things. What does that mean? All sex, sexual intercourse leads to procreation. So if you're a male and a female getting together, you don't know firsthand, you have taken certain measures that will work to prevent sperm meeting egg, the impregnation process. Then you need to understand that sex is for procreation, period. I just wanted to get some, I wanted to see what he was like, and man, I wanted to see what the booty, what they say, I want to see what the booty do. Come on, let's grow up. Let's get there. Sex is for procreation, intercourse. Sexual play, whether that's between male and female or the same genders, is for pleasure. Okay, that's why I said it's first procreation, then pleasure bonding. That sexual play can bring you together because you're forming a bond. It's the most intimate contact you're going to have with another human being, whether that's, man and woman, 2 men, whatever. Okay, that's gonna when a person knows you can give them pleasure, Metaphysically, you're forming a bond. That's why when the guys are so hollering about the woman's body count, they're only telling one piece of the story. What it really is going on is a metaphysical construct. So when you're sleeping with a lot of men, ladies, particularly if they're doing things inside of you, it's a metaphysical contract.
Not only that, you're delving into the area of soul ties.
Okay, I'll accept that. Me and you would have to have a conversation about that, but that's good. We would have to have a conversation about a couple of things because there are some metaphysical principles that sometimes we have to be careful. There are time periods. Okay, there's never one thing that we're following. If we're looking at our natural habitat, there's always just like the lights in the sky for signs and seasons. There are seasons to things.
Yes.
And we need to remember that as people, as our people, community particularly. Then the sexual stimulation, the sex for pleasure purposes itself, or release, again, the stressors. There's nothing to release the stress like the sex. Now, there's a million, I don't want to say that. There are a lot of variations, whether you're doing it yourself or you're doing it with a partner of any sort to the sexual play for pleasure purposes. Okay? Our problem in a capitalistic society is that the money and things are running from us chasing the pleasure over pain. And so therefore, there's so much just chasing the pleasure that because we're trying to avoid this pain. And when you got the most painful community, you think they're not going to go for the pleasure? You think it's more mainstream people addicted to watching pornography than black men? Are you kidding me? You think it's more women understanding the metaphysical ties to you either performing sexual acts or performing as a sex performer, and there's not consequences to that because it's not done from a positive space. So just people viewing you on your OnlyFans because you can make a lot of money. We said that. We were realistic. You need money in this world to survive. We live in a capitalistic country, the most wealthy country, the most powerful military might. You're not going to get around it. Okay? So the best thing is, if you have nothing good to say to a person, particularly when you're in the sex realm, just keep your mouth shut till you figure it out. And if you don't figure it out, just keep your mouth shut. Or you can get creative and be smart about it. And this is whether you male or female, and start using signals. Signals are better than words. Here's a trick for you if you're a female. Even I heard Dr. Africa talk about this. That's where a courtship is so important between couples. You don't do courtship prior to marriage. You do courtship in marriage because the woman has to train the man about how to deal with her and vice versa. It's not about making each other happy. That ain't what you get married for, okay? But you have to know how to deal with each other. Sometimes it's negotiating. It's another human being, free will human being. And when we're young, we don't know that because our parents ain't teaching us that. They're teaching us to find a good man that got a good job. And yeah, girl, he's cute. You can marry him. Stop it. There's nothing wrong with that per se, because those could be expressions of success, and that success could be an expression of his vibration. But we live in such a world, again, that's under demonic influence. So what you think you see is not what you see. So you remember I told you that scrutiny and that discernment we have to use and all that, and those 3 questions, okay? Why is it important for our community to understand deeper and get to more practice? We're not going to override the nature. Remember, food and hunger, Okay, food, resist the hunger, sex drive. Okay, sexual deviance comes from the lack of power, things going on. And you can get the sex practice good, you will have better couples, better families, better bonds, better resiliency. No lack mentality is what leads us to these faulty things. So you got to have this equilibrium I talked about. We live in a space where right is wrong and it turns the humans into animals. That's what they want to do to you. And that's what, for a lot of us, they've done. You got a question for some of y'all. I just want you to think about this. Maybe somebody will put it in the chat, put an answer. Okay, you got a long ponytail. You got fake lashes sticking out, more prominent. That's not your lashes. You got these long, multicolored fingernails. The longer you get, some of them they look like they resemble claws. Everything is about the size and shape of your behind. People killing themselves, going to foreign countries to get insanely unnatural looking behinds because your body frame tells a lot about you. They don't do all that. We're talking about our community. They ain't doing all that research and all that other stuff to do it like some of the Hollywood people do, because the Hollywood people have done it too. Don't let them fool you. You can look at their bodies and know it's unnatural. Okay? They're killing themselves, particularly black women, to go for the behind, shaped and large, wearing these high heels. Sometimes they don't even match. Okay? A lot of black women are overweight. A lot of black men are overweight. That physicality is one of the problems why you need to get into practice. Because the more practice you do, it takes a lot of energy in sex. You'll start slimming up, and you'll start realizing I need to slim up. You just having your little rush, and it's you talking all that good game, but you get in there, and 5 minutes later, both of y'all roll to the side, sweating. Whoo! I'm glad that's Monique, the comedian, used to make a joke about that, about two big people trying to have sex. Okay, people wearing these big heels and heels in the bed. At a certain time now, people don't want to show their bare feet and they got socks. Okay, think about something. What is that? What is that? You got these piercings. What is that?
A trend? Perhaps a fad?
It could be a trend, but think about this. If I drew a cartoon figure of a woman with what I said, and then I drew a picture of a horse like that, an ox, kind of similar. See, it's easy for me to turn you to a beast. Like Dr. Africa talked about this a lot. I don't know why more people didn't listen. Well, I do know why, but it's amazing. People don't listen. They don't pick up this. That's why I say you use the signals and the signs. If people don't understand it, everything that we've gotten in our community, we learn from European behavior, and they learn from the wrong side. Now, there's ways to go into depth about their history, where that came from, where certain things came from, and certain sexual practices. Why the heels, what they represent. Nobody ever say, why are you watching films of naked women with heels on in the bed? You come to my bed with some heels on, you can be in a rude awakening, because I'm taking them off. In fact, don't come to me with no clothes, but if you can't kneel beside me naked and pray, we have a problem. Wow, how about that? People want to talk about their spirituality and religion. You getting together and doing your reverence, having ritual. If you want more quality sex, ladies, start getting in the ritual. Start wearing the same kind of color underwear when you're feeling like that, and it'll send a signal. And you don't have to do a lot of asking. You don't have to do a lot of wondering, and he doesn't either, because trust me, visuality is everything. And then you can start doing having your signals, and couples learn that, because after couples get together, successful couples know Successful couples are not couples that don't fight. Successful couples are the ones who get back to the center faster. So that means they have a blow up, something happens, and usually it won't, but there's some disagreement. And maybe he got to go sit in that rocking chair outside. Maybe she got to leave and go shopping and this and that. But they come back together. The quicker you can come back together and get to your center makes you successful. The sex, more practice, less education about it helps you do that. So you look at the tattoos and the piercings. Dick Gregory talk about that with the piercings. And a lot of people, oh, it's just a fashion, it's a trend. And you don't even know what you're doing. You don't know what it's signalizing. And emotionally, I do know, and I can tell you that. You can say, you can lie and tell me you don't, but I can look somewhere right in your life path and tell you exactly when something happened and why you have that particular piercing. Every single one. Every single one. Putting a hole in your body. Think about it. BDSM as a genre gets a bad name because that's where people get into serious deviance. They're stimulated. Okay, what pain does, pain will do two things. It'll either shock you into opening your channels and you will get clear mental clarity and spiritual and metaphysical high vibration, and you'll get smarter. Or you'll shut down and get in shock and get dumber. That's the only thing that happens from pain, from that type of pain. Okay, and it's rooted in the Catholic Church. Because and it's deeper than, it goes past that, but for our purposes, what we understand is it's rooted in the Catholic Church because, you have people who do self-flagellation, which is self-whipping, okay? And that comes from, whipping yourself. You get, I'm going to see God. Yeah, you keep whipping yourself, eventually you're going to see God or you're going to fall out. And we take that over into our sex because, again, you're not going to get away from it. Okay, it gets a bad name because of the deviance. People get into toilet things and playing with excrement and blood and cutting and torture, asphyxiation, electrocution. They get into pummeling and waterboarding and all that stuff. All that stuff like Abu Ghraib and other things is all that stuff is connected. Sadistic and masochistic behavior. Why is that? Why would you get into that? Well, like I talked about, only two things are going to happen. Some people need the stimulus to get the trauma out. Maybe I've been so traumatized that when I do these things, because it is a physiological process, I am being spanked. I am being choked. I am being this. I'm feeling something. This is action. And from that, particularly if I'm getting sexual pleasure at the same time, but most time it's the act that's going on, you're letting some things out. But that's never talked about. It's just talked about as just a deviant behavior instead of people understanding high science and knowing how to use certain techniques to do things with people to relieve certain pressures, okay, in certain things. Okay, it's not about judging and calling something bad or negative. It's about what practices are you doing and what's your intent. Everything is about intent. Let me say that again. Everything is about intent. That's why you get into more practice. You get better about your intent. I'm just here, I just want to get my oral satisfaction. I used to be shocked as a guy because I grew up in conservative South, and you wouldn't have told me there would be women willing to do that for absolutely nothing or for some of the lowest things that they could do. But you better believe it's happening. Okay. And the patterning, remember when we talked about the patterning with you, the patterning is set. You got to do a lot of work to get over it. So whoever your parents were, whoever you're around up until age 7 or 8 is there. It's going to be there. And sorry, that's just how it's going to be. Sometimes we don't find out till later. It is what it is. That's why the practice can help you overcome certain things. You know, that's why your sex should be regarded, and you should stop looking for short fixes. Women, when we used to give our workshops, women want bliss, want sexual bliss, the quality, sexual bliss. Men want the burst, the frequency. I need to get off. For the ladies, if she would give him more burst time, she would get more bliss time. What does that mean? That means maybe you're a woman and you really, it's only 7 days in a week. Stop thinking we got all this time. And yeah, if you having little 5-minute sexual sessions, I guess you would have sex 3 or 4 times a day. When people say that, and I say, well, how long you having sex? And either they don't want to answer, or they say, oh, you know, we go for a half hour, we go for this and that. And I'm thinking to myself, so y'all spent 2 hours this past Saturday having sex? Now, when I was younger, we go places, and I was with some military guys, and we was doing some things. Yeah, that stuff was going on. I don't say people don't do that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is sometimes people, as Doe would say, people are embellishing or putting stuff in other places where they shouldn't. Just meaning you're not going to really get to bliss time. The woman usually takes longer to get to her peak than the man does. So the man's job, remember, we said timing and pressure. He's got to be able to get there. The woman is, if you go watch any of the tension over videos, Dr. Ellsworth does a wonderful job. Dr. E does a wonderful job explaining that process and explaining the metaphysical process that go on with that and why it's so important for us to really understand what's going on and how that builds our bonds when we can understand, you know, some things. So, what's it saying? When we're working on getting there, and people talking about the burst and the bliss, as a woman, you know, you would like to have a couple of bliss times a week. Okay, so for that brother, you might have to give him about 4 burst times that week, 4 or 5. So what does that mean? That means some days, look, the man, when I say burst, yeah, he wants that quickie, or he wants to get off, meaning he maybe just wants to get some pleasure. That's the sexual pleasure part. It doesn't mean you have to have sexual intercourse with him to do quickie. For you, particularly if you got children and you really don't have the privacy or time, you may have to do a couple of other things. Remember, if that's your committed partner, you're not in any kind of religious violation. There are some spiritual consequences to things. We're under a different influence. Believe what you want to believe, but you're on the ride. It's too late to be like, well, I didn't know I had to hold on to the bar. You're on the ride. If you got to hold on the bars, sorry, you got to hold on the bars. Now, if you get good at holding on with one hand, more power to you. You can use the other hand to do what you're going to do, but you're on the ride now. It's too late. Remember I said, when you walk, you didn't look behind the curtain, Wizard of Oz, you can see it's too late. You're on the ride. So figure out what you want to do, and, you know, do you know? Are you able? Are you willing? That's it. Graham, stop it. A person that's getting paid don't care about you giving them pleasure, because their pleasure coming from you paying them. Come on, brother. You know better. So
I'm trying to get my channel clapped. No, I'm just joking. Question though for you.
yes.
Older women over the age of 50, approaching 60. A lot of people don't think or realize that in their late 40s or 50s, they're really at their peak. But my question to you is this. If you're being satisfied by a younger male or someone that you're in a relationship with, would you wake up, or have you ever witnessed a woman that is being satisfied wake up every morning evil or vindictive or talking about certain pleasures?
I don't really understand that waking up evil, vindictive, talking about certain pleasures.
Waking up with an attitude. Because
Okay.
before I decided to become celibate, I didn't wake up evil or with any issues or mad at the world. First of all, I gave thanks just as a believer, number one. But again, if you are in a healthy relationship, meaning healthy in every sense of the word, what would make one person or what would make an individual just upset or waking up upset or the smallest things as a trigger? You're on mute.
If she's waking up upset, then something has probably went on, or she has some things going on. And if he notices that, and I don't know any man that, brothers already talking about, some of the sisterhood just they too rough, and they talk in the way they talk to the men or talk to them, or and I went over that. So if you waking up like that, we definitely gonna have a discussion and just be like, well, what is going on? Maybe they need some help, or maybe they really are mad because they waking up next to you. And if you don't say, you know what, uh, you can be mad, but you're gonna be mad all by yourself. Just like how Sister Charlotte used to say, you want to be right all the time. That's fine, you can be right, but you're gonna be right all by yourself. And too many women, blacks, particularly in our community, black women wait. We wait too. We always think somebody else gonna come along. We always think, oh, it's gonna be this, and we're gonna meet somebody else, and you don't know. I go irreplaceable, girl. I can replace you. I got well, if you any man you're taking care of is not a man, and sure you can replace him. But if you're dealing with a real man, not gonna run across a lot of them. And you can say what you want to. People that have lived long enough, and people that are honest enough to tell you, girl, you might want to think about that, about that decision. You might want to get a little nicer. You might want to, you got to take a drink, take a hit, whatever you got to do, get yourself straight. Because men will tell you, oh, she don't want to have sex with me anymore, or she's always fussing at me and this and that. And yeah, you remember we live in a capitalistic country, so sometimes as black people, it's just our reality. We get stuck. That's how poor we are. That's why I read those two reviews of Dr. Julie and Nathan Hare's book, Crisis in Black Sexual Politics, first, to show the different mindsets. You had one person talking about, oh, well, they talking about we poor as black people, we got middle class black people and this and that. And then we got another person saying they was right on the money. And it's like, that's the range we get in our community. There's some people who just don't get it. Just like when President Trump said, y'all the poorest people, just what you got to lose by voting for me? And black people got mad because they ain't want, you call us poor. Is that you are poor? You're in America. Look around. Get the numbers. If people love to talk about stats and numbers, I got the receipts. Go look at the receipts. Go to Tone Talks if you're too lazy to do the work. He put stuff for years now talking about our condition and why reparations is important. And it goes into your sex. Because guess what? Brothers know. You ain't got no money, you're going to be solo, dude. Unless you're going to find somebody else. And look, you usually find water reaches on level. So if you going to find somebody and you in a bad state, you probably going to go down to a worse state after getting with them, because you just met somebody that's either bad or worse than you. And negativity pulls you down, it don't pull you up. Like Sidney Poitier say, you either adjust to their walking or they adjust to you. Okay.
Absolutely. And you just made a perfect point. Again, thank you for your service. You have a lot of experience, I'm sure, with the VA. How can I ask this again? without being.
Let me say something before
Yes.
you ask, so you can think about it. You said, "Oh, a woman waking up with a younger partner when she's in her 50s." Um, we got to remember something, okay? Sometimes stuff look good, but we don't realize what's going on. And I have to say this to the men too. Young people are supposed to be for young people. Now, it's nothing. People are going to say, "Oh, I have the right to do what I want." You said it's a free will universe. What are you talking about? You shouldn't be telling people they shouldn't do. I didn't. So you do what you do, okay? But just remember, uh, if there are certain indicators. When we have all these older women that can get with these younger guys, and usually they get with younger guys, especially in our community. Let's face it, they get with some of the younger guys because they got what they want. They got the stamina, so they can remember timing and pressure. They can carry them. They can match where they got to be on their peak, or they can let them get to their peak. Okay, usually it's particularly younger guys, and usually those younger guys don't last. They hang. They might be with this younger guy this year. They might be with this other younger guy this year. Now it's not uncommon to be married to somebody that's a few years younger or older than you. What I'm talking about is when you get into these decade ranges. Now, the only way that may work well is if you have an older man, because usually in our society that's what happens. You have an older man that takes a younger wife. I'm not talking about the 80-year-old man that got with this 21-year-old or whatever, or the 50-year-old that's with a 19-year-old girl. I've seen all kinds of stuff, and I would get on the men. I'm one of those men. I'll say something like, "What you doing with that young? What you think I'm doing with the young girl?" I'm like, you know what? Having your fun is fine, but remember, the first thing about sex is procreation. And even when I moved out of the country, I would see dumb American men get with these young women and get them pregnant. Now you got a foreign woman pregnant in her country. You really think it's gonna work for you, bro? Come on. Okay, you complain about what's going on in the United States with getting women pregnant and how they run it through you. You really think it's not going to be even a little bit more worse? You're like, well, it's I can handle it. Whatever. You 50-year-old with a 2-year-old.
Absolutely. I'm speaking of mid-50s with a 30-something.
Usually, look, when I was doing fraud for checking marriages, they give you the averages on how the marriages will last. So when there's a couple of decade difference in the age, and the probability goes down as the age is the difference in age increases, and one of the common sense reasons is why at 50-year-old, like, I wouldn't ever date somebody in their 20s. Why? You're not gonna, "Oh yeah, she look good, I want that young thing," and there's some men with that mentality, and they do have the stamina and the capability to do whatever, or they take the pills or do whatever they got to do to try to get there. Okay, because they want, usually when I've seen that with the men is because, and particularly, they try to be with older women, and the older women either don't want to be with them because they either shut down, or the ones they're meeting want something they can't provide. Okay, we have, in our community, we have some very unrealistic expectations about partners, particularly in the sex department, because as long as you both are healthy and you can perform, then you're capable of giving each other's pleasure. All that, well, he wasn't built like I need, or she was this. No. Mental. It's mental. The mental blockage is there.
Absolutely. And
that's why the practice will help you. More practice helps you get over that. But you got to say, "Honey, I figured out a way that, I know we're running short and we're trying to get more money and this and that. I figured out how we could do that." You're like, yeah, we could bring more money in and, probably increase our income. Yeah, how's that? Well, we had to do a couple of things, try to relax a little bit. but we usually have sex, a couple of times a week. We're gonna try to get it. We're gonna do this 4 times a week. See where they get there, because it will raise your vibration again because of the practice, because you're getting the pleasure. That's what it's putting for. So
Well, I don't think
there's no other heaven for you as a human being like that. So guess what? Boom, 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 boom. And the spark. What's going to happen to your vibration? Now,
I don't believe it's evident in a particular.
Oh, it's evident. This is why we don't see it. We don't see it. The best times when things have happened with people, or they've gotten the things they wanted, or they've manifested and they've done that, probably come from a lot of times when they've talked about it so much, or I'm doing it, praying. You know what? Go over there and pray, and then you get up swinging and go get what you need to get, because I already gave you the power to get it. Okay, it's vibrational, it's action. You are doing that. You are bringing it to you. Okay.
Absolutely.
If you just if you're walking around with low energy and you're not using what's there, particularly, look, the reason you come together is to do something that you can't do by yourself. Okay. So that's why we talked about more practice in our community. Did you remember what you was going to say? I'm sorry for cutting you off.
Yes. I'm just saying that a lot of people, I believe, talk to hear themselves talk. A lot of people, I believe, are deviants, as you say. There is no way that you can be with someone, a younger individual, as you said, with that stamina, and still have that vindictiveness and visceral in your heart, and on top of it, still financially strapped.
That's some other stuff going on.
Absolutely, it's
with
a
that
facade.
Individual.
It's a facade, and not only is that individual, in my mind, truly delusional, but the people that follow that individual are delusional as well, because it makes no sense. If you sit down and do the math, and not only do the math, but the observance of behavior. Not only that, most partners, not all, I believe, from my experience, you have to be equal in something. Health plays a large role as well, as far as stamina. And if you're unhealthy, and I mean unhealthy as in some type of condition, I have my own, but I'm on a regimen. Weight, mental health, all of those play a role, in my opinion. And some of the things that some people will come and say, and it doesn't have to be social media, it could be off social media, because again, people put on a show. If you're an intelligent person, most of the time you can figure it out. Andrea says, one who wants everything, needing to feel love, are very emotionally dangerous individuals. Amen. Turn to your neighbor and repeat it again.
Well, that's what leads into the deviant behaviors. So when we start talking about, and it's not just the man, it's some creepy man, and what they always say, creepy man in a trench coat, or the man that just always sitting down there and he's so high from using substance abuse, or he's into substance abuse, so he's got faulty thinking. Remember what I said, faulty thinking, misinformation. Sometimes people will say you're under a spiritual influence, but really, where does that come from? Your intent, what's going on. I never forget when I was in my 20s and I was had come back from some military training, and so I was living at home with my dad for a while. And, early 20s, like 21, 22. And there was some teenagers, there was the common law wife had some children that was staying there. and they were teenagers, and so their teenage friends would come over, and one of the particular little girls, was like really interested in me, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? I know she was interested in me, had a crush, this and that, and my dad warned me. He said, hey, uh, I see so and so is paying a lot of attention to you, and I know you're here a short time. You ain't really trying to get involved with nobody, so you're not focusing. You kind of stand, to yourself, and I get it, but don't let that get you into trouble. Because, when you're older, you have the wisdom to know you can pick up on certain energies and certain characteristics of people. And so, especially when you know the person, like I know my son, and I see what that girl doing, and I know what girls like that do. So I know that she gonna try to get with my son, and when she do it, she gonna try to get him when it's a point where if he in the right, he in the wrong frame of mind, to be honest, but in the right conditions, wrong frame of mind, things can happen.
Absolutely.
And so that's why we have to be, and I'm gonna get to that. That's why practice. You have to get to practice, and it's practicing behavior. You can't tell the kids do as I say, not as I do. Now let's talk about this. They turn you from human into animal. What is porn? What is porn? And we know some people watch. People love to. Oh, only time you hear people, you hear some white guys talk about, oh, I watch porn and this and that. But people say, what is porn? Okay, think about it. What is porn? Who makes it? How does it work? Because I remember just in a few generations. Okay, as Gen X's, we can remember the worst thing we saw was the naked underwear ads in Sears Roebuck and Montgomery Ward magazine. People laugh and joke about that, but people acting out their sexual urges, looking at mannequins with underwear on. Now we got kids as young as 10, 11 able to go to porn sites and switch. And I'm not, I'm not going to say I haven't watched that. I'm going to say I never looked at a magazine like Players or We, or Hustler, or Playboy. A lot of men, we definitely know back in the days with magazines, and we would try to find something where somebody hid them, do all this stuff because they made sex so taboo, but people knew it was going on because it's such a common experience that we can talk about it. Don't matter what color you are, don't matter where you live. As a man, especially as a military man, you go somewhere, people talking, and we could joke and talk about being teenagers, and everybody knew about the nudie magazines and, oh, I snuck, my brother had some, or my dad kept them hidden under the thing, and I found it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what are we talking about again? See, we modeling again when we talk about practices. Do as I say, not as I do. Come on, Dad, you behind them. My dad was buying Players, and for the black men, they knew what Players magazine was. Okay, you think I ain't find them Players magazines? I'm gonna find them magazines. Okay, you think as a teenager I'm not gonna find them? I'm gonna find them magazines, even if it means I'm gonna get a butt kicking later. I'm gonna find them magazines, and you know what's gonna happen because you know the natural urges. You're looking for pleasure. Remember, I said sexual play. You're looking for pleasure. Okay, so let's think about that. Let's think about this, and I say this all the time. People don't pay attention to it. We get turned into animal because we don't practice the good sex enough, and people talk at it. But when you look at the movies, pay attention the next time you look at a movie, especially a mainstream movie. I guarantee this is what you're gonna see. You're gonna see the male star and the female co-star, and it's gonna be some kind of action where they beat up or kill somebody, some kind of fancy thing they gotta do. And then after that, they're gonna have sex. Movie sex. It's going to last 1 minute. You're going to see them either rip their clothes off, do whatever, but they're going to engage in sex. So it's violence and then sex. And that's what you're going to see. When you see the movies, sometimes with TV shows, but you're going to see violence and sex, violence and sex, violence. And that's how you're going to see it. Every once in a while, you'll see some people, romantically kiss and lay in the bed like they're going to have a passionate togetherness, but that's very rare, and it depends on the show. Most of the time, what you're going to see is the violence of sex, or it's going to be on it. Like you might see them engage in what might be construed as a passionate thing, but the woman may have a whole bunch of burns and scars on her, or this or that, or the guy might be all, with the bandages and this and that, showing that there was some act, some trauma that took place, and then the sex. See, mentally, you got to understand what the game is. It's going to turn you from a human being to an animal. Human being sex is how you get here. It's a beautiful thing, but as an animal, it's just something to do. Okay? Look at how the women dress. Remember, I said, they got you looking like livestock, which comes from them practicing bestiality, because in bestiality, you don't see them really talking about that a lot, the whole sex with animals, because they hide it. They hide it because if you start understanding that, then you'll start recognizing the truth. A lot of stuff is censored because they don't want people to become aware and understand, wait a minute, why they can't do that? But that's a lot of people are in the mainstream doing that stuff, and they don't talk about it. I'm not trying to be funny, but a lot of men will attest to these women that would prefer to have their little dogs or have their dogs with them than their boyfriends. Remember, hunger and sex. Please don't be misled to think people are acting out in different ways. You see how we get when it comes to food, with the junk foods, the sugar, the caffeine, the other stuff. Oh, you got to eat healthy. I'm going to eat healthy, and you just made the fruit and things into some genetic things you're playing with. Nothing's organic, and it's like, and then if it is organic, it costs me $10. It's like, what is going on? What are you doing? Turning you from a human being to an animal. So when you see the livestock and you see, what did I say, with the heels and the big hoops, okay? All the women that want to wear the big hoops, they don't understand what's going on. You want to do the ponytails, you don't understand. Pony, you would say, a ponytail. Well, that's just how their hair is. That's how their hair is. What's your excuse? You have to understand a few things. So be careful with people that don't want to have a real discussion about that, because Neely Fuller, if you go on YouTube, you can type in Neely Fuller Jr., and he has a thing that says 200 questions you should ask before you sexually engage with anybody. And black people, a few black people, they had a few forums about it, but most black people were so up in arms about how they did. I can't get to the 200 questions, or that's too hard, or it takes the mystery out, and of course, because that's what it should do. It shouldn't be no mystery with somebody you're gonna have the most the most intimate encounter you're gonna have. And then, because, like, what do we say? People in our community, they embellish, they lie, and so many other things going on. So, it's hard to lie consistently. And 200 questions, you're not going to do that in one sitting. Well, I want some now. Take your chances. But here's the caveat. What he would say is, there's no, I didn't know, or I wish I had known, okay, before that. You had a chance to ask your 200 questions. At this point, once we remember, once you pull the veil back, there is no more. You can't go back. Okay?
Absolutely.
You don't have time to have the quality to do them practices, but you got time for everything else. Think about that. You'll make the time for what you want. Okay? We don't have any space. Over in Japan, they actually have, without any judgment and critique. Now, I know it's a whole nother country, but they got places where they have love hotels, where specifically, now, because their population is declining, they're trying to get the people homogenous to that region to engage, or to that country to have sex and have children, and maybe save their group. They're promoting it, but why don't we have more of that? People got to look for the cheap, seedy hotels to be able to find a space to be able to go and engage in some sex they want to have. Or, if you got the money, remember you're in a capitalistic place, you can get the hotel with the hot tub and other stuff. And please don't tell me you're going to those discount hotels that's got the little corner jet tub in there, and you're not taking your little ammonia and your pine sol and filling it up and running that through that thing first, and then letting the water drain out and then cleaning it and then running it again and cleaning it. Yeah, it's a lot of water, it's a lot of that, but you're trying to get the luxury and experience. Take your chances, stuff on your skin, because people are doing stuff in those things. See, this is where we at. We're not being, it doesn't say don't do it. It's things you should do. And then when you get into the practices, what you should do. See, I could say this, whether people want to talk about their religion or people want to talk about this, there's a lot of people can't walk with me, because I done walked through a lot of doors, and I've been fortunate, whether you want to say by the grace or whether you want to say by whatever, of being able to walk back out. So I'm not talking about what I think. I'm talking about what I've seen firsthand, what I've done firsthand, where I've been firsthand, what I've learned. And that's why I went into a space where I understand you got to be on a very positive high. You got to do some practices to you can't just get there. Okay, you got to do the work. You got to do the practice. And the biggest problem we have as a group is we don't have enough of that. It's fast food, fast food, fast food, fast sex, fast sex, fast sex.
So we're at 3, and I'm going to close it about 3:30, and I'd like to open up the
go ahead.
The lines for anyone that may want to come up, because I want to go back to what Empress spoke about. Empress, if you want to come up and speak, or anyone else, you may, but I want to go back to what she mentioned, and I started, and it was when one will or doesn't have a problem of pleasuring their partner in a certain way, but that partner has a problem of providing that same pleasure. And again, Empress, if you want to come up and speak upon that, you are certainly welcome. Professor Al, if you want to expound on that, but I also have a comment on that. What is the problem? I know when I was coming up, when I was a little younger whippersnapper, I would always hear that certain pleasures, if you will, African American men did not partake in, which to me, that was a myth. It may not have been always publicized as much, but it was a myth. But
say that again. What was a myth?
African American males not pleasuring in a certain way.
Okay.
Right. So that kind of piggybacks off of what Empress was saying. Well, what do you do when one partner doesn't have a problem of giving or receiving, but the other has a problem of giving?
Are you asking me?
Yes. And then again, if Empress had made a comment, and the line is open if she wants to come up and expound on that, but that is a problem that I've had conversations with people about, and I'm saying to myself, why do you even stick around for that?
So is she coming up, or do you want me to go?
Well, if she comes up, she can go ahead and discuss, but until then, yes, you can go ahead and continue on with that.
Well, like I was saying when she had wrote it, there's only those 3 questions. I just put something in the chat to a book that I always refer, where I got where that the book, the actual book, where that comes from. Okay. And the book is Overcoming Jealousy and Possessiveness. All right. So it's an easy read. So it's not a long book. It's Dr. Paul Hart. Okay, and I'll come back to that one, but it's pretty self-explanatory, especially for our day and age now. But
Okay,
there's only
thank you
three
so
for
much
the
for posting that.
for that particular situation. I'm doing something. I get him. Basically, I'm gonna just say it because it doesn't matter really what it is. Okay. Basically, what you're talking about is I have a partner. He likes something, and I do that for him. I do something he likes, but he's not willing to do the same for me. That's what we're talking about. It doesn't matter what the act is. He likes his favorite meal is spaghetti and meatballs, and I go ahead and I make that for him, this and that. And when he cooks, I like him to cook me, bake the fish, put it on there, but he just refuses to do it. And I told him this, and I keep telling him this, but he just won't do it. Okay. Yeah, our problem is in our community, we don't have a lot of resources. So sometimes if have a partner, we depend on that partner financially. That's the first way we depend on them. Then we may depend on them in a physical way, meaning we work 2 different shifts. So when 5 days out the week, I'm not here, he's here, and then when he goes to work, I'm here, and somebody's able to be with the kids, and then we're both off on the weekend. We get to engage in our sexual practice, and then I'm doing some stuff he like, but he don't want to do stuff that I like. Okay, again, you talking to others doesn't help when you have an issue with your partner. You have to talk to your partner, and you would start with you have to get the gauge right. You know who you're dealing with. If you got somebody that's a hothead, you can't really talk to, that's just become unreasonable, this and that, don't try to have a personal conversation with that person because it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, you either invite somebody over that can intervene, not your girlfriend. Okay, it needs to be another man that is going to stand up for you, not a man that's going to threaten him like for no reason, but a man that hey, look, I want to get into this discussion, and things get out of hand. I need to know, you can help keep things, safe around here. Okay. If you can get counsel, and say, look, I need you to come with me because I want to discuss something with this person, and I would feel comfortable if you was with me. And well, that's lying, that's sneaking. Well, you know what? If it's that important to you, you might have to lie and sneak to get them somewhere where you can feel comfortable talking about it. But because let's face it, all that sit down with your partner and have a conversation, this and that. That's not the life we live as ADOS or Black American people. We live a very different life. So we need to be careful sometimes when we want to have certain conversations, and we need to be like understanding that certain things we bring up may push the person to a point where they say, you know what, I ain't dealing with that, I'm out of here. That just may be it. And sometimes we're afraid of being alone. We have our own fears about stuff. Okay, everybody's situation is different, so you have to assess. Again, it comes back what I always say, it starts with you and it's going to end with you. You got to assess yourself. How important is this to me? What does this mean to me? Okay, is it going to mean, am I feeling? And whatever energy you put going into it, because your gut don't lie, you already know the answer. You already know the answer because in your gut, you already got the answer, but you kind of looking like, And what the real kicker is, because what a lot of us get mad about is, no, you won't do this for me, but you're going to bake fish for Betty down the street. Are you kidding me? Yes, all the time. It happens all the time. Oh, you won't make me spaghetti, but that so-and-so across town, y'all went to the so-and-so, and I heard, you was in there, spaghetti and meatballs down. Sauce and everything. Wow.
Again, I said absolutely.
So that's the problem when I talk about that I don't want to use the term equity, that equalness, that equilibrium. Okay, we sitting down together, What is it? And most times, again, like when I tell you what Dick Gregory told his daughter, that's not where it happens. Okay, people get together because oh, I'm looking to have a good time. Yeah, I'm looking to have a good time too. Come on. Okay, yeah, we have a good time, and we have another good time because I had a good time. But I say women looking for that quality. You got some quality when you get what? A repeat performance. Hey, encore. With that Shirley song, Your Love So Good, I want an encore. Okay,
Oh my
if you're old
goodness,
enough,
yes.
you know
Remember that.
what's going on. So let's stop pretending. And look, depending on where you grew up and how you grew up, there's a lot of people don't do that. But I always tell men, like there's certain practices that your partner or your spouse may not get into, and that's why the practice is so important. But that's why there is a point where talking, where when I say sex education and talking is important, but then when you get into the practice, because sometimes people they don't do it because they don't know, and then they do it like, oh well, that ain't so bad, okay. And then the more they practice, the better they get at it. And go, that he don't know what he's doing, so I don't want him to do it. Sometimes people intentionally don't know what they're doing. Stop messing around. Bernie Mac made that joke. Oh, they gotta learn. They gotta learn. Everybody's laughing because people know. When you're talking about this sex, it's not like we don't know. We just don't have to practice. And it ain't like, oh, you telling people to go ahead and sex practice. No, what I'm saying is you have to increase the positive methods of what you're doing. You have to apply these things, not just give lip service to them. Because everybody give lip service to, girl, I can rock your world, and this is, all the songs, what all the songs about. Now people are acting out the negativity included in the songs. But when our songs was about, love and love is here, and this and that, people wanting to be in love. Marvin Gaye had the song Put On Some Music, 3 albums in. I'm a Rock Your World, 3 albums in. And people knew what people was talking about. And that's a cold jam. Go listen to it. You're like, oh, okay. Now the time has passed, an hour and a half. I'm just getting in my groove, like, oh wow, okay. There's ways we can say stuff without being vulgar and nasty, but we just
absolutely
we just skip that now because it's just okay. Well, just say what you're gonna say, but we have to get into that. When I say to somebody that if you're in an unequal thing, and it just take some time, think to yourself about what you really want and what it could mean, because there's sometimes how important it is to you, because it does represent whether you want to say imbalance or this or that. And you say, look, and then you just read the book and then put it into practice. It's just like a business. Okay, we've been extending you credit, and you've been coming in here and picking up these lollipops, this and that. Okay, you done got 10 lollipops, and you have to pay $1 for the lollipop. So you can't get no more lollipops till you pay something on your outstanding bill. Well, I don't got the money. You could just get to. Shahzad Ali had a wonderful thing when she talked about elections. She said, sometimes in our community, the women, they see a man that's doing bad or a man that has some challenges doing some stuff, and they go ahead and try to work with the man and this and that. And it's like, do you think he gonna hang out with you or stay there with you after you done built him up and everything? I know he gonna go somewhere somebody don't know. Yeah, his struggle, he had to go because he confront. Then that's what some of our folk do, because that's how deranged and what did I say? Turn you from a human being to an animal. But when you get in good practice, couples, you can tell when couples are getting along, or you can tell when their frequency, their practices are up and they're having the sex, because it's quiet.
Yes.
Couples that ain't having sex, they're loud and angry and frustrated and at each other.
Amen. And you see that? Oh my goodness. I wish I could send you, well, I could, but I'm not, videos of 2 individuals.
You don't have to. I got enough stored up here, trust me.
And it's number one, it's embarrassing. And as I said, for the people that follow them, they're just as blind if they can't see, especially the ones who are married. If you are married, number one, you don't have over 18, 20 hours to spend on social media. You have to take care of that individual in the way you're supposed to, plus your family, plus if you have any other businesses on the outside, it's a lot of work.
So let's
When I
think
get
about
off of
something.
here, I'll get maybe a few hours of sleep. I've got to get up and do 2 assignments, come back, do a live, and then go back out and do my regular job.
So see, there you go. So let's think about something. How content you can look when you're getting what you want. How content do you think you are? How like when I talk about that vibration, when you're getting what you want, how do you think that's vibing? People don't understand how it changes you when you don't have to worry with that stuff. Like Neely Fuller would say one of his things when he say, he would tell black people, you should be having sex, just a couple times a week, and that's it. And people say, oh, that's it. There's 2 times. He say, you have it 2 times so you don't be worried about it. You have it 2 times when you set it up, so you don't have all this crazy innuendo, and that's what people problem. And they don't want to talk to each other, so but she don't want to have sex, but I can go around here and her cousin can do this and that, or I can get into this lewd behavior. I said this, and a lot of people are going to get mad, but I have to say this if we're going to talk about this practice and these deviant behaviors. See, when you want the sexual pleasure, okay, men, what did I say? Men want the burst time, right? So women not understanding that think that for him to have the burst time, they got to have the whole sexual intercourse with him instead of doing some things that, he may not with, well, I want to do this. Okay, well, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'll do this. And it don't mean he won't go and try to have a sexual engagement with somebody else. That has to do with immaturity and people not being able to keep their agreements. But if we're together, we have agreements, and then like I'm trying to be exclusive, well, I'm going to be exclusive to you, then you have to be like, look, babe, I need burst time at least 3 times a week. And you want to have sexual bliss time a couple times a week. So a couple times a week when I come in, we're not going to have our bliss time sexual encounters. We're going to have shorter sexual encounters, whether that's, people say, oh, I'm going to have 15 minutes, and they really go 5 minutes. It is what it is. Some people don't even go that long. I don't know how that is possible, but that's whatever. Okay. So you say 30 minutes or less, they have that type of sexual encounter. That would be considered a burst moment. When we would give our trainings, that's what it would be. And then a bliss moment, okay, is over the half hour, because not only that is the stuff is the sexual intercourse you're having. You're also, there's some things that you prep going into it that puts you in the right space energetically, but it's not methodological. So it's not like okay, where you see people learn how to dance, is they step here, step here, step here. It's not like that, but you have like a structure. Okay, so think of it that way to get to your bliss moment. So the other 2 times where he want a burst moment, you might decide, okay, I'm with my husband and I'm just going to use my hands. I'm going to use my feet. I'm going to use I'm going to use my orifice or something else to get him his burst moment, because I'm not having sex, all those many times. I just don't feel like it. Or I got the kids and this and that. I'm just, no. So I'm going to do that to get him his 4 burst moments. And I'm going to get my 2 bliss moments when we have our time to get nice and, we get into it, and then, we can just go there. So I'm having my 2 bliss moments. I'm doing 2 so-called quickies, and then I'm doing like 2 hair jobs, and that's in a week. So that's 6 times. Ain't but 7 days in a week. You had 6 times in 7 days. So nobody should be complaining, but we don't do the work. It's like, I don't want to do that. It's you nasty. Isn't it? Well, she old so and so. She don't want to. She don't want to give me no play. Well, I'm paying. I'm trying to work here, pay bills. do this and that. I ain't trying to just, and that's where we go. We're human beings and we under distress. Nobody has guided us correctly, and we don't have enough practice in doing it. And by the time we would get enough practice, guess how old we'll be? And ain't nobody, it's like, come on. That's why we have to have more. And we can help the youngest. Like I said, for us, it's done. You are where you are. You can get a little better. People, get better at managing and doing some things. But, it's again, you're already through the veil. Okay? And, you can do certain things. You can take a season and just be with yourself. You can take a season and be exclusive. You can take a season and explore with others because it is what you want it to be. Try to do so in a positive manner. What I was going to say is you have men are greedy. Our society now, especially our community, are greedy. So they want the pleasure. When you remember, you're in a capitalist society. The men want the burst moment. So they have a bigger drive, the conquest. Okay? So if I got a man that's willing to act out in another way where I can get my burst moment, and we can just meet up, and we can do this, and we can both go on about our business, then is that really me being into a lifestyle of loving a person that's like me, or am I just being greedy because I want the pleasure? And there's a lot of men who are just greedy and they want the pleasure. It's not about that they're into so-called alternative. I'm gonna leave that right there. Really think about that before you comment or disagree or whatever. Think about what I just talked about, and then you will understand, because we're talking about energies and we're talking about what's driving people and how they act out deviant. Same thing with being with the youth. Same thing with being with certain practices that go into negativity because of the intent.
Absolutely. And you're seeing an uptick of stories where, again, we saw this in the past, but now it seems like it's coming back again with these teachers being involved with these students.
Well, yeah. Again, you're under a demonic drive.
Yes.
A lot of times we, and especially Gen X, don't really get it because we went to school and these was baby boomers who was teaching us usually, and it was a different code. It wasn't like it might have never happened, or it wasn't like a college professor didn't see one of his students afterward, especially at that age, and something didn't happen. But, especially in our community, so many people, first off, people would be on you about it because they say, oh, you need to stop messing with them young girls. You need to leave them young men alone and this and that. I remember actively being a young man because, I remember being a young man that sometimes people would pull me because certain flirty older women, whether you was in a church environment, whether you was in some other environment, and they'd be like, okay, it's so-and-so, because I had issues with boundaries and limits, like so many of our men do, because sometimes when you're in, and I said this in one of the other podcasts, when you're the poorest man in the wealthiest nation and you can't exert no power, you expect a man, people expect a man to have it, to readily go along with limiting himself to one woman and one type of sexual encounter, when we talking about pleasure, and we talking about something that I used to be able to control. Nowadays you can't even control that because so many things are regulated. Like here, we can't just talk regularly. You can't say certain words. You can't talk about certain groups. It's just like, well, isn't this supposed to be a forum for discussion? Open discussion, open content. Like, why is there so much censorship going on? Why is there so much this and that? Again, turning you from a human to an animal. Cattled and corralled.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been another wonderful broadcast. We're going to have to do a part 2 to this and a couple of other topics you've discussed. You are a wonderful wonderful guests. The audience truly engaged. I think half of them have gone off to nighty night, which I'm about to, as you can hear in my voice, because I do have to get up early. I'm sure you do as well. But
I
this has
actually do.
been,
But
um,
you know what? You asked, and sometimes if we had the opportunity, we need to just go with it.
absolutely. That's why I said if you're ready, let's get it in. Well, not like that, but you know what I mean.
you know,
You know what I
don't
mean.
worry about it. Our show is see that's a part of why we have to have discussion to get towards practice. So people don't we feel uncomfortable when we just say stuff that could be misconstrued another way because we know where our
Absolutely.
minds are at. You know what I'm
Because
saying?
I do with people I actually know dialogue with banter, which is understood and there's no problem. But because of social media and society, it's like you have to really be careful. And I don't like living like that. It's uncomfortable. It's like I'm existing and not really living.
Yeah, this
That's
is this is new.
uncomfortable.
This is new. This wasn't what. In fact, we could go back even a couple of years,
Yes.
and it wasn't like this. But
No.
we're under duress and being turned from human to animal, and we really need to pay attention.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. Well, you enjoy this Friday, the last day, can you believe it, of March. This year is about
Indeed.
to zoom by. And I don't know if you caught any of my live prior to you about Trump being indicted. Um, I did a short, and it's already gone 1.6 views already. A lot
Wow.
of people upset. Again, we predicted. Good night, Empress. Hopefully, you can come up with next time because I'm not going to let you off the hook. I want to hear your story. You share your story. I'll share mine of the past. Deal? Deal. But no, seriously, this was expected a couple of weeks ago and it didn't happen that week. But Judge Joe Brown did say if it did, it would be one of the worst things because what you're doing is opening up a whole nother Pandora's box where Biden is going to be looked at more. And he considered it as many as a witch hunt. And we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Baltimore, DC, New York, definitely, and all the other cities around. I haven't seen anything issued yet as far as any measures for protest, but he's not going to be arraigned, so they say, until Tuesday. It's supposed to be sealed. Again, I'm sure they know what's going on.
We'll see.
Yeah, but again, I haven't heard any buzz yet. Like I said, I'll look at OPM to see if there's any road closures for possible protests because you do know most of the time, depending on the group, you have to have a permit. But then you'll have some that'll just assemble. So everyone be cognizant and most of all be careful. Because this, again, 2016, the statute is already run out. So it's a lot there that we don't know yet. And the headline, of course, is driving people crazy. But as I said before, look at, coming from an intel point of view, what's coming up. So if he is to be arraigned next week, that's April. Well, April 19th is the anniversary of Oklahoma City. So, I mean, it's a lot of things. If you really delve in deep, you got to look at. It's so much. It's
All
so much.
right.
Well, you have a great morning, sir. Please make sure that, well, not make sure, but rise peacefully with joy in your heart because someone won't. And enjoy the smallest things. That's what I think a lot of people fail to understand. It's the smallest things.
Indeed.
So again, thank you, everyone. This has been Dr. Al or Dr. AH, who has hosted this informative, educational broadcast. Thank you for all that engaged, and we will be having him back again very soon.
All right. You have a good morning.
You do the same, sir. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye for now. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to get a few hours myself and start this thing all over again, God willing. Be safe, be well, and you know the rest. Be healthier.